All right, 3 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. And I will ask Mr. Jesse if he'd give us an opening prayer, please.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for just waking us up this morning, dear Lord, and letting us see another day. And dear Lord, let's pray for the world issues that we have going on, wars, and even for our country, where we have inflation and things like that are going on in the world, dear Lord. And dear Lord, let us guide us and lead us through our meeting today, dear Lord. These and all the blessing in my Heavenly Father's name, amen.
Amen. Matt, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Absolutely. Would all citizens of our nation rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Betty, would you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Koontz.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Present.
Mr. Jesse.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
He's going to be late.
Is absent, okay. And Mr. Kimbrough.
Here.
So you have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, I'm going to remove the minutes of the June 7 meeting. We need to just make one edit to those minutes that we can discuss afterwards. Other than that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with that removed.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Koontz.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Jesse.
Aye.
And Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Betty, would you go over the modification of the June
Yes.
7 minutes?
This is on page 11 of your packet, page 8 of the minutes, but page 11 of your packet. The motion to approve HRSD to move forward with the gravity system at Cook's Corner, that paragraph, that motion was recorded in the minutes as being unanimous, but it was actually a 4-1 vote with Mr. Harris voting in opposition. So we'll make that change and move on.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes with that change.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes with the change. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Roll call, please.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Koontz,
Aye.
and Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Thank you. Moving right along, we will open the floor for public comment. Do we have any announced public comment?
I have two public speakers. Up first would be Eileen D. Smith of Urbana.
Good afternoon. I am here to speak to the proposed boundary line adjustment for Urbana that is going to be requested. And I just have some statements to make because I live in the neighborhood. I'm concerned, how will it impact our present neighborhood? I'm sure zoning, different kinds of zoning will be considered, and that would come to the public, I would suppose. And then how would traffic in our neighborhood be affected? We have kids on bicycles and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
My next public speaker is Robert Jackson of Urbana.
Mr. Jackson?
Good afternoon, Robert Jackson.
Is the mic on? Yeah. It's on.
Okay, it's on. Okay, thank you. Robert Jackson, Urbana. As you know, or may not know, I am an advocate for police, body, and dash cameras. As a concerned citizen of this county and all that's going on in this country today with gun violence, it's more prevalent now than ever before to have these cameras in place. Most of the surrounding counties have body cameras. So my question is why this sheriff office has not invested in cameras? The answer is expansion. The sheriff's office has grown tremendously in space, and essentially right now would bring me to the topic of the Puller Center building. I have not seen or read any report of what action is being taken about the building, if anything. Without the needed space, there can be no cameras. For the last several years, this administration has talked about workforce housing, Tom Carter Gymnasium renovation, county office windows renovations, relocation of school bus maintenance facilities, and portion of the St. Clair Walker relocating and renovating into a public restaurant. No mention of sheriff office renovation or replacement. For the last 2 years, the only issues that being talked about are water and sewage and how it would bring businesses to the county. Well, I'm still waiting for that to happen. The only thing I see coming here right now are more and more campers, which increases additional responsibilities to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office was added to the CIP back in 2019 for renovations or replacement. Here it is years later, and nothing has been done. So in closing, I would like to say to the board, please act promptly to approve the Puller Center funding needed to get this project on track to completion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Good afternoon. My name is Dawn Moore. I live in Urbana. It is an honor to be here today. As you all know, I cannot make most of the meetings because I am picking my daughter up from school, but they don't have school today. So I dropped what I was doing at work, changed my clothes, and ran up here. I was here the night that, and the day that we discussed, or you all discussed, the junkyard ordinance. You put a law and an ordinance into play, and I know of 2 people who have put in complaints, who have had issues, and they're told to move. I have an issue with our tax-paying money, paying for employees, because that's where their checks come from, is tax funding. And their resolution is, if you don't like it, move. Well, if I was there first, I don't feel I should have to move. But you also have other things in play, such as RPAs. You have guidelines on RPAs. Why can I cut down my RPA and my neighbor can't? I just don't understand it. I really don't. And the comment of, well, all I can make them do is plant a tree. So make them plant the tree. I can't use mine. Why can they use theirs? I don't, the junkyard ordinance, you make the complaint and they don't want to give you the complaint form, but you make the complaint and then there's really nothing done. There's no outcome, there's no follow-up, there's nothing done. My next topic, the school. And I will always stand here on behalf of the school system. I am still disappointed in the board entirely for not giving them the other $22,000 they needed. Then a week or 2 later, I read something where you took $23,000 out of the budget for something and gave it to something else. You could have funded the school. Our children need the education. You all went to school. The funding was there for you. Why are you hindering our youth today? Our children need an education. Everything has gone up. The schools need the money to do it. And I commend the school for getting all them CIP projects taken care of, not on the county dime, but on grant money. Dr. Sykes searched, found, and implemented and got everything taken care of to take off the CIP project. So now you should have extra funding to help the sheriff's office. I don't get to come here much, so I'm going to leave you with those topics. But I'm going to be back next month. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I'd just like to remind everybody that we have 2 public comment sessions with every one of these meetings. We have one at the beginning. We also have one at the end for those who can't make the beginning schedule. Anyone else like to address the Board of Supervisors? Thank you. I'll close public comment. Moving to constitutional officers. Treasurer's report is report only on pages 59. Any other editorial to add to the treasurer's report? Thank you. Any questions for the treasurer? Thank you for that. Commissioner of the Revenue, page 64. May, any commentary? Any questions? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, do we maybe need to reconsider our request of the treasurer and the commissioner to join us every month and maybe move that to quarterly or something that's, I think we have less questions than we had maybe 2 years ago. And bringing them here every month might not be the best use of their time, but I'm open to what others think.
Mr. Chairman, I guess it depends on what's going on. I think if some of the board members do have any questions, I think we can either communicate or just tell them, could you come to the board that day versus, setting a certain time. I mean, I think communication is the most important thing. And I think if we could, if something that we really need, either talk to them or if it's anything else, we can let them know ahead of time.
Personally, I'd like to hear everybody's input. I would be fine with that. Every time we've requested that the reports be added to, you all have done a great job. The reports are so comprehensive now, I don't have any questions. So I'd be fine with that. Don, what do you think?
I agree with Wayne. It's probably not necessarily for them to come in on a monthly basis. I'd say either bi-monthly or quarterly would be sufficient. If we're in, collection of taxes, that may be that they would certainly need to be here for that to answer any questions at that point.
Okay, thank you. Good job. Next is, well, how timely, Sheriff's Office to talk about the Puller Center renovation.
Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce Ben Burton for you that don't know him with Bay Design. And he's been working with our committee on the Puller Center, and he is here to give you an update where we stand and where we need to go. So, Ben?
Thank you, David. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I believe y'all have had a chance to read the program report that's included in your package, and I'm here to give a quick synopsis of that so everybody understands what's in there. The executive summary, it's 4 segments of it, executive summary with 3 appendices about the architectural, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the civil issues that are related to what's necessary to take the Puller Vocational Center from what it is today to an effective sheriff's office. The first thing I wanted to cover is why it's really needed. Everybody has heard time and time again that the sheriff does need additional space, and we summarize that in the beginning of the executive summary. The existing sheriff's office is very overcrowded. It was built for 8 deputies, 5 staff. Now there are 21 full-time deputies, 8 part-time deputies, 9 full-time staff, 5 part-time staff. There's outdated property and evidence rooms. There's an outdated unsecured emergency generator. It's got to be started by hand. There's no parking for the staff in the emergency vehicles. There's no records room. There's no training room. There's no armory. The sheriff has to pause on getting body cameras for all the deputies because there's no records room to store the information in. It cannot become an accredited office until that, and so you're restricted for applying for grants until the accreditation has happened. So we've looked at the situation. We've been meeting with the Sheriff's Committee, the members of my civil team, the architect, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, have all had several meetings, gone through the building itself. The sheriff's staff has spent a lot of time thinking about what is necessary and how operationally it should be related in this building. So there was a lot of good input from that committee. Basically, from an architectural standpoint, the building can be done. It can be modified. There's a lot of basic stud walls in the building, but there are also a lot of concrete walls that can't be done. We've taken that into account as to how this should be rearranged. One of the more important things that the Sheriff's Committee came up with was operationally to think about how the different areas of the building would work with one another, how the staff would get, and what would need to happen during the nighttime and during the daytime and during emergencies as to who could get into what part of the buildings so that it could be accredited completely. They spent a lot of time and actually came up with a plan for how doors should be put in this building and which doors needed to have card access for one person to get to another area in that time and to limit it. So there was a lot of good point made to that. From a mechanical, electrical, plumbing standpoint, you've got a 1980s building. Basically, the systems in it cannot be reused. You're going to have to bring the electrical system back up to code. The plumbing systems, they're broken right now. And one of the things we need to do is to change the plumbing, instead of going out of the rear of the building to a drain field, we need to have it come out of the front of the building so that we can extend a sewer system to tie it to the HRSD system. So the building would no longer be on a drain field. One of the good things that's happened already from a plumbing standpoint is the Middlesex Water Authority has already installed the meter. This building is now metered and taken off the well that it used to be on, so we can take some of the systems out that are inside the building, some old tanks and that type of thing. So that's in the process. So the plumbing infrastructure is already well underway. Basically, the HVAC system, as I said in the summary, it's old, it's antiquated, it's well past its usable age. It needs to be replaced, and it's been, we've made the summary, the explanation of what needs to be there. Now, as far as the civil side of things, what needs to happen on the outside of the building is the parking, the amount of parking that's there is satisfactory, but we've got basically a 40 to 50-year-old pavement that's completely torn up, doesn't drain well, needs to be heavily repaired. We need to have an extension to the HRSD sewer system across the 600 feet with 3 manholes past the county animal shelter to the HRSD pump station that's coming, assuming that they finally accept the bid and authorize that construction. And then there are several pieces of security lighting that needs to be upgraded, security fencing, that type of thing. So all in all these things come together You've seen the summary is for the architectural renovations, 1.9 million. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing renovations, 1.35 million. The site improvements, 500,000. So roughly you're talking about 3.75 for the construction to renovate the building. Within the appendices, we have several documents, plans. If you have any questions about any of those from the civil standpoint, the architectural standpoint, or anything like that, I'm ready to answer those questions if you haven't had a chance to take a look at them. I think probably keep on going, Matt. That's the existing building, but if you go to the Thrasher's first two sheets of the plan, keep on going. I think, let me stop right there. Pages 12 and 13 of the report, it'll help you understand what the new floor plan is all about, because there are specific areas, as I mentioned. There's the entry and vestibule area. The public could get in there 24 hours a day, but they couldn't get past that point. That is necessary for the accreditation. On the left side of the building will be the magistrate and detective wing. Again, controlled access to that, but it's separated from the deputies wing. Again, controlled access to that. There's a service facility wing, storage, kitchen, that type of thing. Then the emergency operations center and meeting area wing. So that has a separate entrance, or actually has two entrances to get to it, so that during a heavy emergency other than daily work, you could get into, and then the sheriff and his administrative staff. So that's what it looks like now. The next page shows what it will become. And it has an exterior sally port. There was discussions about that. I don't know that there's any need to go into any of this detail, other than as you look through this report later on and relate those descriptions that I went through to that second page, that'll help you understand what the different wings of the new layout will be. If you keep on going, Matt, to one other sheet. Keep on going. We talked about the idea that, one more sheet I believe will show it. Talked about the idea that the existing building doesn't have a generator that's operational. What is necessary for the accreditation is that there needs to be a remote generator, a remote HVAC system that is fully secured. That's the general idea of where that would be in relation to the new building, or to the renovated building. Matt, if you go back on to way back at the end, the last two pages of the report, we can take a look at the I guess it'll be page 56. Or no, not 50. To the civil layout. be page 121. A quick overview of what will happen outside the office. That gives you an idea of where the new sewer system needs to go from the front of the building over to the HRSD system. And there you see the points that are C1 to the right of the building. That's the existing drain field that'll be abandoned, that type of thing. Go back one page further back. This will give you an idea of, there's the fenced secure parking area, the B1, B2 areas there in the back. That'll basically be where the staff parks, where when the state police come and need to park, or when there's any material that needs to be kept in a secure place, that's the area that'll happen. The A1, the A2 areas are all going to be public parking areas. So that gives you a quick idea of what's going to happen on the outside of the building. We're here to answer any questions, anything that is that this presentation or the report has brought up. I know Sheriff Bushy is anxious to get an approval from the board to get authorization for Bay Design Group and the full design team to go into the detailed design now, prepare the plans to get them to go out, ready to go to bid, so that it can be bid and so construction can happen. I'm available for comments, questions.
The connection for water and sewage to the, in looking at your diagram, which cuts across in front of the, or the C2 line, is that the most effective way for water and sewage to get to the sanitation lines, as opposed to taking
For the sewer, it's the shortest route.
compared to taking a left and going, compared to taking a left and going straight to Route 33?
This will get it to the pump station. If we took it out to Route 33, we'd have to build a pump station. This gets it by gravity to HRSD's pump station that they just bid. And once it gets in their pump station, it's theirs to take care of.
The HRSD pump station's not shown here,
It's
right?
not shown, but it's,
That's where they propose.
that's,
That
will
area.
be, where we're showing, where that yellow line ends is tying to a gravity system that they're installing. And now, as far as the water line, where you see the D1 notes, that's existing water line that's already in place. The Middlesex Water Authority has already installed a meter exactly where Matt's showing. So that is already tied into the water, and public water is going to that building right now.
Okay, my next question is, I'm looking for you to venture a guess for me, just so I can compare. We just got this proposal a few days ago, 2 days ago. So my next question to you is, based on the estimate of what you have on the cost side of this, and the major renovation, what would you venture the cost would be to completely build a new building?
Sheriff Bushy has looked into that with adjacent
Counties.
other counties, other sheriff's office, and they've run anywhere from $6 to $8 million for
Okay.
smaller buildings.
Okay, thank you.
That was back then when the prices have doubled now.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I got a quick question. With the sewer, now I'm looking at it, you had a drain field and everything went through the back. So with this, won't you put a grinder pump in the back and then take the pipe around front so the gravity feed? Because you gotta understand, when the building is there, everything is fed to the back and it drains to the back. Now, to me, is that what you're gonna do, or are you gonna
No,
cut through the
that's not-
floors, cut everything up, and make everything drain to the front of the building? Just a question.
Exactly, and it's a good question.
Yeah, because to me, it seems like, everything is under the cement and it's going that way. You put a grinder pump there, pump it to the front, boom, versus cutting all through your cement floor, making a fall through all your I'm just, I don't know, I'm just asking.
But we already have to cut through the cement floor.
Okay.
Because the plumbing that's below there is already broken.
Okay,
and
that's
raised
all
up.
I wanted to know.
So
Okay.
we said, hey,
Right,
we're taking up 3/4 of it, let's turn it, take it out to the front, eliminate a grinder pump that would have to be maintained privately, and now it's all a gravity sewer.
I'm clear, okay, that's the only question I had. Okay,
That was one of the first questions we were looking at.
all right.
You started off talking about cameras and accreditation. Does this facility, in its current design, does that yield us accreditation within 12 months? Like, where are we in the stage of getting towards this accreditation that we're talking about?
Eric's doing that right now as we speak. So he's looking at it, and he's on the committee, so he's writing as we develop the plans, so that once we get in, we would be accredited probably within 2 months.
No, about a year.
Within a year, so, because it takes them a while to get in.
Within a year, once you're in, once everything's,
And just staying on the cameras side of things, what precludes us at the point that this building ribbon cut, we're in it, we're moved in, we've gotten through the accreditation? What at that point precludes us from getting our cameras?
We can buy cameras now, we just don't have any room to put a records manager and the clerk that would have to manage that. Everybody's piled up in the other building. Once we get in and hire those folks and get them trained, we can get the cameras. The accreditation will come eventually, but I mean, we can start it. Once we get in the building, we can go ahead and hire those folks and start the process.
It seems to me that we've deviated from the CIP, unless I'm looking at the wrong CIP. And I think it's worth just pausing for a second and reminding anybody who in the public or otherwise is not fully aware, but originally we were thinking about building a new building. And this opportunity we were made aware of because it's our own asset and it's redeveloping something that we have. And theoretically, it is an opportunity to save a little money in the long run versus building a whole new facility. I think most people that have been following our sheriff's department for the last 10, 20 years know that we've outgrown the existing facility, and it's a question of new, or can we find something other than new that is cheaper? And I think what we found is something other than new that is cheaper, but it's at the time when inflation, labor costs, building prices, maybe engineering costs are all very high. And I'm just thinking, what I'm hearing from the community is, yeah, I hear we need a sheriff's office, and I hear you're doing what you can to keep the cost down, but I'm also hearing, when are we going to get cameras? And I think it seems to me that if we're putting all the pieces together that answer some of the reasons why we don't have cameras, part of this process should be, this is the new facility, this is the new accreditation, and this is how we achieve cameras in this community. And it should all be wrapped into one thing. This is a major capital improvement that's once every 20, 30 years. It happens to be coincident with a time when we're evolving information-wise and how it's transmitted, and our small scale has prevented us from being able to take advantage of that. But if we're going to deploy substantial capital right now, from my perspective, the program should be, here's the building, here's the accreditation, and here's the modern technology, and that should all be part of the presentation.
So what we've done is, with the committee, we've looked at a couple things. So we have an EOC going in there because we know from the past, if we do have a disaster here in the county, the EOC that we have currently would never hold everyone. So this moves the EOC down into that building. And that's there for about 15 years is what we're calculating, because the 911 center is going to stay here, because it would cost us over $1 million to move the 911 down to this building right now. 15 years, you're going to have to build another one, because they usually last about 15 years. We're also looking at the longevity of this project. And I think Bud has put in that this project could be doable. It would support up to over 100 deputies as this county grows. And it would be supportive for at least 40 years once this project is done. So we're looking at it not just as present, but where we need to go in the future. All the fiber optic lines, everything that's going to have to go in there, we've designed it where it makes an easy flow. We're not crisscrossing through the building, so that, because the future for us is going to be in the computer network. And so we're looking at that to move forward. Currently, we are outdated, terribly bad. Like in the beginning, we don't have a correct evidence room. We don't have training facilities. We don't have a lot of things over in that building that was built for 8 deputies. This project, when we first started it, we were looking at about $2 million, but then the inflation hit, and that's where the cost is going to be driven. The longer we wait, the more it's going to go up. I don't know. I lived last time with Jimmy Carter when gas was 52 cents and it went to $1.25 and everything doubled and never came back down. I don't see that happening. So I would like to move forward with it. You double what we figured on, about 8 to 10 million is what some of the other surrounding sheriff's offices had paid. Now that it's doubled to build from new. So this is a 10,000 square foot facility that's going to grow with the county. It's going to be ahead. We're actually going to be ahead of something instead of behind.
Do you foresee any revenue events from training held there that might come back to us as a community?
So as our committee, I explained to the committee, a lot of sheriff's offices will host training. And we have people that would love to come here and train here, where other sheriff's offices, police departments would send them here, and we gather that money and we pay, whoever's going to teach it, but the revenue would go back to our general fund. It goes back into the fund for the county. And that's because, it would be great. A lot of the jurisdictions, like some of our deputies just were in Annapolis for a training facility. And, they stay in the hotel there. If you get a hotel, you're going to fill your hotel up. And then the host that ran it gets the benefit of it.
Yep. I guess I'll just be more pointed with my final question. Are you in support as the sheriff of having cameras in Middlesex County by the time that building is up and running? Is that something that you think is the best thing for our community from a law
We wanted
enforcement?
cameras a long time ago. It's just, we don't have the right infrastructure to go forward with it.
Right, but from the day that we have this building in place, we'll have that infrastructure. Would that also be appropriate to have the cameras in place the day that we cut the ribbons?
I would have to request for new hires in advance. I have to have a records manager and a records clerk. That's in the budget, as you saw, for next year. You'd have to advance that out, and I'd have to get them trained, because they'd have to go through training to how to manage all that.
Right, right. No,
That could be done.
And just speaking from my perspective, what I'm hearing from the community, and not from everybody, but from the
Well, you're
community.
hearing from it, but I've only had 2 or 3 people talk to me about it.
I understand.
But I want it.
I understand, and I'm glad to hear that you want it, but what I'd like to see is an option that says, here's the building, with it, in the same time frame, we're looking at accreditation, and on top of that, here's what it would take, once I have the building and the accreditation and the storage room and et cetera, here's what it takes for us to get from the point that we have the building to the point that we also have the cameras. Rather than just pushing it off and saying, let's get through this at first, if we're going to deploy capital, I want to have it strategically deployed so that we move on as a information age sheriff's office in a new facility.
That's the whole intent for this.
But I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just asking that we really include the cameras as part of this, or at least say, here's what the cost is, so that the community can come back to the supervisors and say, wow, I didn't know it was that much, or absolutely, that's what we want. I think the public wants to see what is the cost beyond what you've just presented to get us to this point, but with cameras. let's find out what that is now while we're looking at all of these expenses, and let's make the move all at once and get it done, and at least have the community talking about what is the cost. If we're checking all the other boxes, you have the facility, you have the space, maybe you don't have the personnel, let's have that conversation elevated to where it's in the paper and in the community, and we actually understand, and we're not just coming back and forth at public comment, but we actually understand what is holding us up from getting cameras. If the sheriff wants it, and we're considering $5 million worth of expansion to a facility that, you know, I think is a good use of taxpayer funds versus 10 million or more of a new facility. But let's have the answer for the community as to why wouldn't we include cameras at this juncture? This is major spending in our sheriff's department like we've never done. Let's do it right. Let's include all the things that the community's asking about.
That's why we started this, Mr. Coons. And, you know, it's not just the cameras. There's a lot of other equipment we have right now. We have no place to house it. I have equipment for the sheriff's office scattered throughout this county that we have no facilities to hold anything.
I guess I'm not communicating well.
But-
I understand right now you don't have
I know your
that-
agenda is the cameras. The cameras will come, yes. We want the cameras more than you want them. I've always said that. I don't know where the communication goes with the public where we don't want cameras. I don't know why that's even started. We've always wanted it.
Sheriff Bushy, just so I'm better educated, out of the surrounding counties, Gloucester, Matthews, Lancaster, Essex, and you can add to that if you like, how many of those counties have body cameras currently?
There's, I think, 18 jurisdictions throughout the Commonwealth sheriff's offices that do not currently have them. Everybody has them, but they have everything in place. Matthews just built a new sheriff's office, 10 years ago? New Kent just built a sheriff's office, 7, 8 years ago? We're the last in the region. Upgrade anything to move forward.
That wasn't my question. My question was, out of the surrounding counties, and you can include New Kent too, how many of those have active body cameras on their police force?
New Kent has them. Matthews has them. Gloucester has them.
Okay.
Northern Neck doesn't. I
Right.
live on the Northern Neck, they don't have my picture.
Okay.
But you said out of 133 counties, 18 do not have them?
No, I think it's, I have to go look. It was, at last, they're trying to get it down. We're trying to get, it's the rural counties that don't have them.
Right.
And we're part of the rural counties.
Right.
And-
But it, I mean, we're not early in considering this. We're probably not right on time. We might even be a little behind even compared to 60 other rural counties.
Yes, we're behind.
A little bit.
Yeah, we've been behind.
And Sheriff, I hope you don't feel any
No,
contention
it's
from
just,
me.
we've been trying to get on the CIP for years.
Yes.
And it's been bounced.
Yep.
And everybody's in this county is getting renovated, and we're the only building that's open 24/7. And we got a building here that can be saved. It's gonna cost some money now to do it. But when Bud put this together, it's looking at, like I said, a 40-year life if we do it. And we calculated that to go out to that, $90,000 a year? What was it? Did you calculate?
No, I only calculated the payments if we
The
did.
payments, if we did
Yeah,
that.
I only calculated payments, and I calculated on a 15-year, just a 15-year bond, and that was $305,000 a year,
So, 300.
Nope,
Yeah,
I'm
just-
sorry, $350,000 a year.
Not to belabor the point, I'm fully on board. We need a sheriff's office. We've needed a sheriff's office.
For a long time.
It shouldn't have been pushed as long as it has. We are where we are. My only point is, once we get to the point that this is built, or something is built, we're into our new sheriff's office.
Right. You're gonna
In-
have-
In my mind, we should also be targeting having our technology up to speed as well, or at least knowing what the costs are so that the community can come and tell me, John, I don't want to spend that much, or I do want to spend that much. We should have that in front of us. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and since I've been your sheriff, I've close to now brought $2 million in on grants, grant-free money, and I'd like to keep continuing. And this would give me the option to go and get those other grants that are out there that are grant-free. Right now, I'm restricted because we don't have a proper facility. I can't get the grants that I'd like to get. So there's a lot more out there you're going to benefit. Not just cameras, you're going to get a lot of other things that will come with this package once we're accredited.
Just to clarify that for the public, there are grants that you can't apply for because we're not accredited.
Correct.
Right.
We need to be accredited to move on.
Am I clear that you would like for us to bring back to the next meeting the cost of the cameras? Is that something that we're looking for, the cost of the cameras and the staffing? I can do that.
I'm one member. I'm giving my point of view is that we should better understand for the public's purposes as we're considering a major, almost twice as much as what we intended to spend on this. There's no question as to the need of it. But in my mind, what I'm hearing from the public is we want to know how much does it take to get us to the camera place, and this gets us 80% of the there because we have the storage and the facility and the accreditation, but there's more. And I just want it to be out there for the public to understand what does it take to get us from this is built, some 12 to 18 months from now, whatever it is, to cameras. What's the delta? What's the difference? And I just think that should be public knowledge.
So the cameras for the road patrol, their equipment is going to run you about $75,000, which we can get a grant for some of that. Then you're going to have a records manager and a records clerk. The records clerk, the manager oversees everything because of the accreditation, so the manager has to see over the accreditation process and that clerk. So there's going to be actually two clerks that manager will do. Those managers usually get in the range of $50,000 to $70,000 a year. The clerks are usually in the range of $30,000 to $40,000.
Sheriff, in there also, I apologize, just also, doesn't it require an assistant Commonwealth's attorney too?
The assistant Commonwealth attorney, once we do this, then he gets an assistant. That's going to be about $100,000 a year.
Because that's set by the comp board.
Because
so,
he has, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just was
So
thinking of other people that we have to add.
The other Constitution officer also gets an assistant once you implement body cameras. So we have to review everything and put everything through the channels as the state has set up, and then it gets sent over to the Commonwealth Attorney's assistant, and that gets presented to the court. So there's, I think at one point it was a couple $100,000 initially to get started with body cameras.
And I think that's my point. It's not that I'm even pro body cameras. I'm just pro having the community aware of what does it take for us to get there. Mm-hmm. Because you understand it in your head, you know what you don't have, and you're focused on what you think you can get.
Right.
I'm more focused on what does it take if we wanted cameras, because the average civilian doesn't understand all of these things you're laying out. I think just this dialogue is helpful. But for me, before I sign off on this major renovation to a part of our community that has been underappreciated for too long, and it's at twice what I thought it was going to cost, I want to know, okay, are we done talking about major issues with the sheriff's office for a while? And if we can wrap this all together, to me, this seems like an appropriate time, because if we're talking about additional staffing, it may be appropriate, it may be inappropriate. The public should be able to come and tell us, yeah, I think it's time for us to do that, or, geez, I see that cost structure. And then we're not sitting here making the decision without that information. We're making the decision with the same information the public has, and the public is telling us what decision to make.
So we put already in the budget for next year for the clerk and the manager. That's in there, but we said not to activate it until we do get into something, because there's no sense in appropriating the money if we're not going to use it. So that was in the budget for this next upcoming year. The grants, they're always there for body cameras. We can get those. We're trying to stay with the same system that we have for the cars, that we're using the computers in the cars. It's Gtech, and their proposal is a real good proposal. We like their cameras because we're surrounded by bodies of water, and their cameras are water resistant. Where there's a lot of these other cameras, you're going to be paying for more cameras every time a deputy goes in the water. So we researched that, we would narrow that down. Also with that, you can go forward into the cameras on the dash, which are very inexpensive, but you have to have a records manager and a records clerk to do that. And a place to put them, which we don't have.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yes.
Bud, can you just maybe highlight what the major areas in this cost buildup that you have, the major areas where we may be surprised one way or another? What are the softest estimates?
Anything that takes delivery by some truck with, that's gas. Chairman Gimpro, we've been surprised in so many bids recently. You've seen the HRSD bid that came in, that extraordinarily high for what was basic information. I think the entire package is subject to major modification. I watched the news last night, projections on where inflation's going, how the Fed is working, and questions were asked, when were people going to see, when was a homeowner going to see changes, reductions in the cost, their cost of living from groceries and that type of thing. And the economists that were on there was saying it's going to be at least 2 years. So this package, the design package being going prepared and going out for bid, let's say in about a year's time, we're going to, inflation, a recession may have hit, and everybody could be so hungry for work that bids come in great. Inflation could have grabbed us all by the behind, and we could go out the roof. And that's why we'll go through a competitive bidding process on the whole thing.
All right. Thank you.
I have one last question. On page 83 of the board package, it lists a bunch of costs and quantities. You have a subtotal, you have 20% contingency. I know what that is. Can you just address what soft cost would be involved with that?
Which page was that you were looking at?
It's page 83 in my document.
It's the page with the thrasher. It's got a list on there.
So my question is, what
yeah.
what is the soft cost referring to?
Yeah, the soft costs at this stage are the unknowns in the design process as they go in there and grab more detail about exactly what needs to be done. The contingency of this, the 20% contingency on what is necessary for the things that have been estimated. The soft costs are the estimates. Is there some surprise that we haven't seen in this programming stage that may add some cost to it?
Normally on a bid process, that's covered under your 20% contingency, though.
That's in the bid process. You won't see a soft cost line. When the plans get done, the detailed plan will be what's bid on. There won't even be a contingency line item in there that's being bid. The contractor will come out.
So I can assume that
That's why we said,
the soft cost would be change order type scenarios?
yes, could be. But that's why we're thinking, that's why I've said the architectural side of this is not 1.5 million. It should be, you should be thinking of 1.9 million when we go down the road as far as the budget for the project. And we're hoping that it comes in, that their pieces of it come in at 1.5 million.
I'm looking for 1.3.
I hope so. HRSD was looking for, you all spent the time there.
Another subject. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One last thought, is there any opportunity to do this in phases where we might reduce our exposure to the current market? I mean, I get we're exposing ourselves to an unknown in the future, but like the Sallyport exercise room is significant. Is that something that we could live without for a year or two and see if there's a more normal market? Is there any, I just threw an idea out there, but is there something that we
One of
could?
the things we have talked about, there's not actually in the building, the architectural and the MEP work that's so tied together, there's no real phase to that. In the civil side of it, yes, there is. We could postpone the actual repaving of any of the parking areas there. And there's some drainage improvements that are necessary. And what Sheriff Bushy and I have talked about is that when it does go to bid, we're going to have, just like we had over at the Nature Trail, we had some additional items. We would put the repaving of the parking area and the restriping as a separate line item to say, gosh, can we hold off on that for another year? Yeah, you could. So that.
Yeah, I think there's merit if you could generate some of those ideas and some of the potential deferred savings.
That's the only one.
That's the only one.
That's
Damn it.
the
Okay,
only one.
I thought maybe I had an
The sewer
idea.
has to go in, and hoping HRSD will be ready to receive it
Yeah.
within 12 months. Everything else that's out there,
Nothing would please me more than seeing a new sheriff's department in an older facility that we've reused and recycled the facility and done well by the taxpayers. But then to wait 2 years and see us actually paving when it's cheap to pave, saving maybe $100,000, something like that. You know, if there's an opportunity like that, I don't think what I would like to think is that when people leave this room, they don't stop thinking like they're under the pressure of this room. They instead are thinking, okay, this is real money, and it's you know, if there's an opportunity
if you go to sheet
to save some money.
122, there's an idea up there, the item number 1, the public access area at the front. If we paused on a lot of that, we may be saving, might postpone $100,000. There's some drainage improvements that are necessary. In item number 2, some paving sections of that. Again, that might be $75,000 to $100,000 that might be postponed. We might put off the lighting. On something like this, I think it's prudent to have exterior lighting, but it's something that might be postponed. Number 3, it's got to happen.
Yeah.
Got to happen, or
But
you get a porta
you have to
potty.
understand, too, that this building has an issue, and there's water. There's 2 inches of water in it right now from the rain the other night. And that drain, you're going to have to chop up part of that parking lot to get that flow to go back. So some of that parking lot's going to have to get torn up because the water's coming right in the building.
So we have been thinking in that direction, but there's not much opportunity.
Mr. Chair, I would like to say too, I think really, you know, just looking at everything, we don't have a crystal ball. You may wait, and I don't want to be piecemeal. And I think when you turn the key, I want to take key turn and be done with it. Because you wait, you don't know what's going to go down the road. It may be high, it may be lower, but we don't have that crystal ball. So you have to, but sometimes you have to bite the bullet. Go ahead, do what you have to do, because the sheriff's been delayed for these many years. Let's go ahead, do what we need to do, turn the key and forget it. And you know, because once you get accredited, then you're going to deal with these other things that need to be done. Cameras and all that kind of stuff, because you're going to sit down, you study it, and then you'll know a little bit more of what things going to cost once you get in there. And because things goes up and down, prices goes up and down. You may have to get some good grants and stuff. So, you know, basically, I'm going to leave it up to the sheriff to when it's his call. You know, you're going to have people going, hey, I want it right away and stuff like that. But the sheriff's going to do his due diligence to get it at the proper price that he wants it. and then he's gonna try to save the taxpayers as much money as he can. I'm not gonna sit there and dictate to you, say, I want you to do it right now and get it done and stuff like that. And we all want body cams, no doubt about it. But let him sit down and strategically decide how he wants to do this. And that's just my opinion on it. Yeah, you're gonna have people, they want it right now, but you gotta be accredited. We're not accredited right now. So let him get his steps and be accredited, do what he needs to do, and then he can let the public know, hey, this is what everything gonna cost. So that's why he can cross his T's and dot his I's, and then he can come down with a good figure. Because right now, it's probably not a good figure. If it's a year or 2 years, things gonna go up, prices go up. We don't know, we don't have a crystal ball. So that's my piece on it. That's my opinion on it. And I'm like I'm saying, been here a long time. We should have had something a long time ago. We don't. Now we're at the process of where we can have it, and now you want to delay this and delay that, and then things gonna go up because we had a prime example with this. We right back here with the sewer. Not with the sewer. That's a prime example. Holding up another month or so costs more money to the taxpayer. When we had everything set up, we should have went with it. That extra month cost us more money, whether you know it or not. It did.
So, and to your point, some of the demolition, we've been talking, some of the demolition will be done by inmates. We will bring the inmates out of the jail, and we will do some of the demolition, which should cut some of the costs down. So there's things where we can get in to help cut the costs. I mean, this is a projected cost, but our committee, I guess they looked at me and said, I want to watch it. So I'll be watching every penny because it is the taxpayers' money. Most of the taxpayers know me. I watch every nickel. And I'm one of the few that give the money back. I think we didn't spend our whole budget this year. And we're not going to be like some other agencies. We're taking our furniture with us. You know, we know what we are here in this community, and we're going to take what we have with us. Some places want to buy everything brand new. We're not thinking that way because you have to look out for the taxpayer. But we're also looking at 40 years down the road that building's still going to be there. And that building will support up to 100 to 150 deputies for the future. Because once your water sewer gets here, you're going to grow.
So I think it feels like there's consensus support. Keep moving ahead as rapidly as possible here. Is there something that we need to do at this juncture?
If possible, I'd like a confirmation that we would like for Ben Burton's company, Bay Design, to establish the bid documents. Is that the next step?
It's the next
To establish the next step, as well as, I'm assuming you're going to want the county administrator's office to start looking at financing options for this facility?
Right.
Those are, I think, the two actions we need, or I don't even know if that's a form of action, but that's what I'm looking for today.
So do we have, I can't remember in the packet, do we have a proposed investment?
We do not have a proposal yet. The next step will be, I'm getting the sense, let's move forward with this.
Yeah.
I will be getting back to the design team, asking them for their detailed proposals. We'll bring that all together, get it to Anne Marie for her to bring to you to give us the go-ahead. But
Okay.
they were all anxious to hear that the board, that this was an acceptable approach to the direction that the board wanted. We knew the sheriff, it was acceptable to the sheriff.
Okay. Anyone object to moving ahead to that next step?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of points that I'd like to make if
Okay.
I'm allowed to.
Yeah.
Just a couple of quick things. I don't know how much effort's been put into this, and I'm definitely not calling anybody out on it. The gravity sewer price, I don't know how deep this gravity sewer needs to go, but when we did the unveiling of the HRSD bid, I think the low price on gravity sewer for a comparable size pipe was over $200 per foot. I would recommend just a small design change, and that is going with an E1 and a grinder system back there. That would allow us to go around this dog park that we had largely donated to the community, around that drain field that exists there, and probably a little bit more fluid fashion. That would probably save us a little bit of money. I know this is an estimate. I have zero confidence that we're going to get gravity sewer based on what Hampton Roads found for $105 a foot.
Matt,
But-
that number is about double what two local contractors gave us.
Based on the depth?
Based on the depth and on recent projects over in Kilmarnock.
I hope that's right.
So
We need those local contractors to bid HRSD project. The next thing I have.
HRSD has so many.
The next thing I just want to draw to your attention, this area that y'all are proposing to fence in, I mean, that's fine. I think the sheriff needs a lot of that area. I would recommend that you shift that, well, I can't do it on here, but in real time, but I'd recommend you shift that fence down area to allow for this road to now that's a bad example, but basically to pass through as has kind of been some of the thought. When that entrance road came in, I don't know if it's a deeded right-of-way or somehow, shape, or form, we have a right-of-way that goes all the way to the rear of the property where the county has additional property that can be developed along with the school board. That entrance road is pretty important to that because that's a ready-made access to the rear of the property. Just a small design change for sure, but something to take into consideration for your bid package.
We'll-
And if you shift that fenced area to where we already have a fenced area, you would have all that space in
I'll have
addition
our-
to the parking
Our
area
survey
too.
staff double check to make sure that
Yeah.
if there's a deeded right of way, or if there isn't, we'll pull that 40 to 50 feet off that property line so that a road could go down there. Because a road could straddle that property line since it's all county property. one way or the
Exactly.
other.
We got total access to the property, so where we put that road is, in fenced area is pretty much a preference. The last point I want to make on that note is, where you're talking about us getting all the water congregating, we have a lot of drainage that comes along that fence line and congregates in here. It's always been the hope and the desire that if we could regrade the facility and extend the road out into the rest of the county property, we could get that stormwater further down the road, so to speak, and not have it congregate in that area. So keeping that access and that right-of-way open is profoundly important. The last thing I have to add is on the financing component. I'm sitting here listening, and, you know, Sheriff Bushy and I have worked off and on this project for, I guess, since 2012, when I got back as county administrator. I think we may be eligible for USDA funding for community facilities loans / grants, depending. I'm going to approach them just in the, under the understanding that the consensus of the board is to move forward with the project. See what kind of rates we can get with the USDA, and see if we can't get this financed similar to how we finance the water system, under community facilities funds. It's a different program, but maybe a possibility there, if that's the will of the board.
One thing on USDA funding is, and we've had this experience with several other projects where they funded it, is we can do a simple plan and simple specifications and simple bid processes and oversight that keeps things quicker. If USDA comes into it, then all of a sudden, the requirements that they insist that you and your designer and the bidding all happen. To give you an idea, for a sewer system we did over in Lancaster County, I went from a set of specs that was this thick to a set of specifications that was 2 inches thick and required weekly inspections by everyone, which all of a sudden increased the cost. So sometimes you can get cheaper funding, but with it becomes front-end cost that get involved, so.
But it would
as
be
you-
useful
as you
to have it
chat-
as a comparison. I mean, we
Yeah,
don't know what
yeah,
the interest rates
yeah,
would be.
make sure that
If it's
we-
a 40-year asset and you can leverage low interest rates over a 40-year
Yeah.
term, it may be a good way to go.
Yeah, exactly. But make sure they've made clear all the requirements they'll place on you.
Oh,
Yeah,
we've
you're aware-
we've
you know
learned a lot
those.
with how to deal with the USDA. It really becomes a USDA project, but at 1.125% for 40 years, it makes it affordable.
Yeah.
And it may afford us the opportunity, as John and some of the other board members have mentioned, Wayne, I think most recently, to do more now and be done with it and be penny wise and not pound foolish.
Exactly. Exactly.
Great. Thank you. Thanks very much. Gentlemen, sounds like full speed ahead.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving to agency and staff reports. VDOT is a report only. Page 123, is there any? Good.
Surprise.
Good to see you.
I'm actually here to give the quarterly update and report in person today. I just wanted to go over a few items really quickly. Construction-wise, asphalt paving is complete within Middlesex County. Some supervisor requests I did want to touch on while I was here. The Deltaville Shared Use Path. We had a meeting with the county staff to discuss potential issues and options for alignment on that project. Trying to find the optimal route to avoid as many utility, right-of-way, environmental impacts as we possibly can. So we're still working on that. District staff right now is focused on smart scale applications. It's smart scale season. So I expect to get an update from district staff later this summer in regards to the shared use path. The sports complex road at St. Clair Walker, we met with Mr. Kuntz on site. I've been talking with Mr. Walker and Mr. Kuntz, and I've spoken to Mr. Fleet on potential solutions at that location. I think there's some short-term solutions that we can do, and then there's going to be some possible longer-term solutions there. Short-term just being kind of fixing the shoulders, more or less, and then longer term, we kind of have to identify what that area is going to look like. I think there's some possible working with the school and the county on that one. I'm not sure, but happy to help with that. I think that's a great project. I know it's used a lot down there, so we can get something done there. In terms of maintenance, just wanted to throw some highlights out. It's mowing season, so mowing is ongoing. We are complete on the primary roadways and the high-volume secondaries. That would be like Town Bridge would be a high-volume example. And they have begun the lower-volume secondary routes as of today. As part of that operation, all the roadside trash is removed before they mow. Obviously, we might miss a little bit of it, but they do pick up litter before they mow on all routes across Middlesex County. Multiple ditching and pothole repairs countywide. And then just some interesting stats that I pulled for this past month. There was a total of 32 service requests within Middlesex County. Currently have 22 of those open. 10 have been closed with an average day to close of those requests being 4 days, which I thought was some interesting stats. The top 5, if you're interested: potholes, deceased animals, debris, pipes, drainage, and unpaved ditches. Those were the top 5 requests. I'd be happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Can you give me an updated timetable for the multi-use path? It just seems to be postponed.
Yeah, so the problem with that one is the route. Where are we going to take it? There's a couple parcels we're running into. The cost can start to balloon rather quickly, either due to environmental impacts, right-of-way impacts, or utility impacts. And I think we've got a handle on some of those, specifically like the utility impacts. But if you remove one, then you bring in another, whether it be right-of-way or environmental. So we're really trying, and Mr. Walker and I have talked about kind of finding ways to shave down the scope and find ways to save money in certain areas while still achieving the ultimate goal of the shared use path. So I I wish I could give you a hard and fast date, but I think towards the end of the summer is when I can get the district to come down here and give you more of an updated scope on that project.
We know it's not easy,
Yeah.
but we know that people are in peril every day as they move up and down the road on their bicycles and walk from the marinas into town. So I just hope that it stays front and center instead of, oh, this is really difficult, so let's just postpone it. I just don't want that to be happening.
Sure, no, and I understand that, and I think what our concern, we want to stretch the money that we have, that the county received as far as we possibly can. And I think that's the will of the board as well. And we don't want to bog it down and just get a small section when we could maybe get a longer section based on the route. Just trying to find that optimal route. But to do that, we do have to dig in a little bit deeper with some of these items. And we're finding, I mean, Mr. Walker brought up some good ideas about different surfacing of the path as opposed to, using, I think it was crushed oyster shells at one point, or just really like all the options are on the table for this one to drive down the cost and get the biggest bang for our buck for the project.
Thank you. Don?
In the complex scenario, where do we stand with that? Who's taking the lead on that? What other discussions need to take place for something to be done there?
In the short term, it's really, we can get out there as long as we have time to get the shoulders kind of dressed up with, it would be stone. It wouldn't be much more than that, but just to get those shoulders, because there is a drop-off on the shoulder currently, get those shoulders dressed up. In the long term, it really depends what I don't know. We discussed multiple options when we were out there. There's talk about adding additional parking locations and that sort of thing. So we were trying to work together to find potential options there. So it really depends what the ultimate long-term goal of the complex is. But I think there's options that VDOT can help with in the short term and then potentially in the long term, depending on what the overall plan is for that area.
And who do you need that discussion to take place with about what the potential, whether we want to go short-term or long-term?
Well, in the short term, we can do that. That's on VDOT. And the other sort of identifying additional parking spots, I don't know what the county or the school, I don't know what their plans are. I'm working with Mr. Kuntz and Mr. Walker in that regard, but that's really up to the county. VDOT would have no interaction with that. But as part of that, there might be funding that we could find to perhaps build a sidewalk in the right-of-way, something like that. But in terms of the actual construction.
We had talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I can assume that you're going to take care of dressing up the soldier.
We can get that done.
And then what needs to take place probably needs some more discussion between several people.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Don, I was just going to say, I think what needs to happen, for the short term, like you said, the shoulders, VDOT's willing to do them. Long term, I think they're standing there waiting for our school and our county to get together with the ballpark folks, and somebody needs to be the leader and sort of say, here's what we're doing. So I would like to ask the administration to maybe get with the school and invite the ball field committee and see if somebody can shepherd this project, because VDOT is basically going to act as a contractor or an expert and sort of submit what they can contribute, but we need a leader running the project, and it should come from the school or the county, not from one of us, theoretically.
And I think that Johnny Fleet should, since he's the president of the complex committee, ought to be involved in that discussion as well.
Yeah, and maybe Tammy Putney.
And Tammy Putney.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Dustin Harris and try to get him and Tammy Putney together, and we'll scratch our heads on it.
Cool. Okay.
Add that to my list of things.
Any other questions? Thanks very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the
Thank you.
update. Next is school matters. Hello, Dr. Seitz.
My legs were frozen and did not want to move from my seat. So, in your packet, you have a budget supplement request form, and I just want to go over that because that's like a two parts to that. Overall, we're asking to move, well, total's $99,106.60. I'll move down to the $54,106.60. That we're asking just to move over to the next fiscal, and that is to cover the remaining balance from the Mosley Architects Middlesex High School master plan. They have not finished, and so they have not finished the billing for that, and this carries over for them to finish that. That's that piece. The $45,000 is actually, I come to you with a new ask. Before I go into that, I will share that although we don't know the final figures finishing up our fiscal year, and we won't know those until the end of August when sales tax accrual has ended, we are expecting about $250,000 or $350,000 that we will not have used in our fiscal year that just ended. And so with that in mind, we are asking for support for the JROTC program that we're planning to partner with King and Queen County Schools. Some of you are a little bit more aware of that than others, but they reached out to us, giving us the opportunity to send students to their program for this year. It's at a cost of $3,000 per student, which I consider very cheap. So the $45,000 that you see here is to support 10 students to participate in that, and the transportation costs that would go along with that.
Dr. Seitz.
And so that, yeah, so Karen raises a good point. I don't know if you want to approve that as a bundle, that like it is on here, or if you want to approve those as separate. One we're asking to move, one is a new ask, sorry.
My apologies. I was just trying, can you pull your mic down just a smidge? Sorry, I'm just sitting here thinking I can hardly hear you. I'm a little
I
worried
can
about.
move it,
There you go.
the
Thank
whole
you.
thing. Is that better?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry. I didn't,
You could have yelled at me to
you,
move
but you were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt. You're
Sorry.
talking numbers. It's important to, however the board's pleasure is in handling that.
Yeah, that's a separate one there, right?
You cover a lot of ground there, and it may be helpful for me just to play back and make sure I understand.
Absolutely.
And maybe in
Yes.
the audience to understand. So one of the meaningful points you made was that the school spending in this fiscal year is about $350,000 lower than budget. It doesn't mean that you're going to send a check back to the county. It means that you didn't
The county didn't have to give it
didn't
to us.
obtain
Correct.
those funds in the
Correct.
first place.
Correct.
So
In the county's reserve.
you operated under budget for the year.
Correct.
In some
And
part-
that's $250,000 to $350,000. We don't, I know Karen doesn't like to spitball, but that's in looking at where we may end, and we'll know that exact figure by the end of August. But yes, that's correct.
And some of that may have resulted from obtaining the grants, the COVID-related grants, in order to apply those funds. Is that correct?
Right. A lot of what we obtained in grants went towards our CIP. We saved about $1.5 million there in what we were able to obtain in grants. And so some of it certainly goes towards this. We had a few positions that we were unable to fill. Anything that we were able to create a savings, we certainly did that.
So, great job, thank you.
Thank you.
Then separate from that, there's a move, there's a reallocation of one item for another of $54,000.
Sure, it's just moving it over. It was appropriated by you all, I think, last fall in the CIP for our fiscal year 2022. Mosley had planned to be finished before the end of the fiscal year, and that would have all been spent, so would not have been here making the ask. But they are still finishing up their
I
design
see.
work.
So it's a F-22
Carryover to F.
Carryover just
Correct.
to appropriate it into
That's
in the new
correct.
year.
Yes.
Okay, and then the third thing was the J. Rotzi new program.
That's a new program. Now, so I don't know if there's another piece that was not in your packet, but should have been added maybe at your desk this evening, which was an appropriation request. That was for grant funds that we received from River County's Community Foundation. Okay, they've got that. That. Thank you, Betty.
That's the handout that we got
Yes.
on our desk for
Mhm.
$50,000 appropriating. Is that something we're going to talk about after we finish this one?
So that is a grant we applied for through River Counties that they've already sent the check for it. We're just asking it to be appropriated to us. It supports our Compass Academy.
Compass, okay.
Yes.
So I guess with all that understood,
I
what
do have a
discussion
question.
would we like to have among the board on these matters?
I don't know. Let me get a question in first. The acronym for dealing with King and Queen, is that right?
The JRTC program?
Okay.
Yes.
And just for curiosity, that program, you said you had 10 students that are going to it?
Well, they offered us to send as many students as we would like.
Okay.
They had the space and they were able to accommodate us. We held an interest meeting, and then we held another interest meeting where we had the lieutenant colonel come and speak about exactly what's required of the program to make sure that the interest was true. We still had about 25 students who were interested. We want to start it. We felt that starting it with 10 students was probably most appropriate for the who would see it all the way through, and then most appropriate fiscally for us to ask for that amount of money. I come to you now about it because the opportunity from King and Queen came up after our budget was approved. So it was not something that we were able to build into our current year budget. Certainly if we're able to have this opportunity for this coming year, it will be built into our budget for future years.
And what was the criteria of the selection process for the 10 students that ended up going?
So we asked the counseling department at the high school to have students, there's not necessarily a grade point average or anything like that factors into it. Attendance, not necessarily a discipline record that goes into it. It really was based a lot on interest in those students who would commit to seeing it through, commit to having they have to have their hair cut a certain way. They have to commit to a certain amount of physical fitness and things like that. And so we really are taking what the students have shared with us that they will do in order to make that selection. We are looking at rising juniors and seniors. Down the road, if we continue with it, we'll be able to open it up to, certainly based on our budget, to more students, even those entering ninth grade.
Okay, great. And you said to complete the program, is that just year by year, or is it a multi-year commitment?
It's year by year.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
And Don, if I may, it stands for Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC. Dr. Seitz, just one quick question. So we can send as many kids as we would like to for the 100,000, or is it basically 10,000 per student?
It's 3,000 per student.
Okay, so we've got a lot of flexibility in that 100,000.
No, so the 100,000 that you see here, 54,000 of that is the transferring the Mosley over. And so specifically, I'm asking for 45,000, 30,000 for tuition, and then the additional 15,000 is to cover all the transportation costs.
If we did have 15 that were very interested, could we find a way to do that?
If you can fund it, we can do it.
Thank you. Just want to leave that open. You may
You
have.
build it, they will come.
It may be one of those things where if they have it, they will show up and want to do it. So just want to be armed for that. Thank you.
Correct.
And they have to cut my hair like mine.
They do have to, and that was part of what we wanted them to hear, is that you have to maintain a certain haircut. You can't have a beard, goatee, those types of things. We learned from some of the other counties that they need to make that commitment first instead of showing up and then realizing they need to do that. And so that's why we held it with the lieutenant colonel from the Army to have that discussion with them.
Wayne, comment?
Can make a motion. All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget supplement request FY 2023-01 Also, the appropriation request form FY 2023-04. And also with the appropriate change with the $45,000 that you switched over.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any other discussion? Roll call, please, Betty.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will
It's
have
it's
some.
an exciting program.
Yeah, we'll have some very excited students. We will bring them to visit you once they get in. Thank you.
Next is Social Services Annual Report only that's in the packet. Anybody?
Go ahead.
Anybody from Social Services care to address us? Okay, thank you. It was a good report. Very busy year for Social Services.
And Mr. Chairman, just to acknowledge a couple of things, we've been working with King William County, who is short-staffed in social services right now. Not only are they doing a great job for us, but we have a couple of our employees that we've loaned out to them at the request of the state and King William County to aid them through a personnel challenge at the moment. So they're doing a great job for us in helping another county out. We're more than happy to do it, but now King William owes us one, so we've got a favor. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I hate to interrupt, but I've got a staff member here that's probably got other duties that he needs to get to that I'd like to introduce to the board that I didn't get to earlier. If it's okay with the board, I'd like to introduce him.
Yep.
Gentlemen of the board, I want to introduce Jim Nagy. He is the new part-time executive director of the Middlesex Water Authority. He's a professional engineer, and I know he's been on the job since, I guess, Friday before last, and he hasn't left yet. So we're very happy. I know the Water Authority is very happy to have him, but this guy is really happy to have him, and we look forward to working with him, and think he's going to do great things with the Water Authority and help us get that up and running and going. And I'll have more to report on the county engineer position in August.
Thank you. Jim, welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Jim.
Next is Board of Equalization, their final report. Ray? Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's good to be here again. You know, for those of you that aren't familiar with my role, I was the chairman of the Board of Equalization this year, and we completed completed all of our meetings during the month of June. I've been the chairman for the last 3 boards, so that gives me a little bit of experience and knowledge about the process. You've seen the report. I'll just go over a few things with you. You each appointed a member and an alternate, so there were 5 of us with 1 alternate. We met for 13 meetings, which is a little less than what we have in the last 2 sessions. Everything's a little different each time, but that's the report you have before you was a cooperative effort. At our last meeting, I asked for comments from the board members, put them together, and then as another cooperative effort, the secretary and I prepared that final report for your information. Like I say, things are different every session. This session or this year's meetings reduced the county assessment by about $2 million. 5 years ago, that amount was $3 million. 9 years ago, that amount was $1 million. So I say things a little different. What was different this year than the former times? We had less appellants. There were less appellants, but they had multiple properties, which we had not encountered in other years. They had multiple properties. The other thing that was different is that no one came before us to have their assessment increased. No, I mean, you'd be surprised. That happens a lot.
That
I mean,
has happened a couple of times.
Sure.
Yep.
People come and for whatever reasons, and they're probably pecuniary, but they come before the board and say, I'd like to have it increase. And as a result, we only ended up increasing one person. If you look at the report, you see we also discover things. That is, in the course of researching a piece of property, you find that maybe the adjoining properties were improperly assessed as well, and then you take action to either increase or decrease those as well. So that didn't happen too many times, but it did happen in, I believe it was 32 lots that we took action on. With that being the basis, are there any questions? We had the honor 5 years ago, Mr. Kuntz was on our board. And, so
Mr.
he can
Chairman.
speak from experience, too.
I just have one question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Ray, can you, this was the first year we had an alternate. Can you please speak to that and to the benefit moving forward? I know it's difficult to find people for these positions.
The alternate is an important person because when you know that one of your members is going to be absent, you want to have 5 voting members because one's absent, obviously you only have 4. So it's very important. And we found out, I mean, this time we found out that I don't think we used it effectively. We did have the alternate came to one session, which was a very full session. And then we found out that the other times we needed that alternate, we found out that the member was going to be absent too late for the alternate to adjust their working schedule. So our feeling was that in the next time, that alternate attend every one of the sessions, whether they can be a voting member or not. And that would ensure you that they were available. That's the lesson we learned this time. But I think it's an important part, of the process is to have an alternate. In fact, the state code allows you to have 2. And we did not ask for that. So I think 1 is sufficient if we change the procedures to allow that person to be compensated for the time that he would attend the meeting and whether or not he participates. Are there any other questions that I can answer? I'd be happy to return if you read the report fully and you have another question or two. For several years, I've recommended that we educate the county about the process. And I know I had a private conversation with the chairperson, and I volunteered to help with the appropriate county official, which I think would probably be the county attorney. Sorry, Heather, to work on something. But we do have 4 years to work on it. So, as I say, I did volunteer to do that. I'd be happy to work with her if you so wish, because I feel the public needs to know. They need to know the difference between a tax rate and an assessment. And they need to know that when they get that first assessment letter in November or December, what can they do with it? So it's little things like that that I think would be useful. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ray. It's an important process, an important option for taxpayers if they feel that they've been unreasonably assessed. And so thank you for leading that. Next is the Economic Development Authority. And Trent, so glad you're here.
Yes, sir. Well, I need permission to work with Matt, just spend $120,000, so. But just trying to summarize, but I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all might have. Essentially, the county has $120,000 in set-aside, non-competitive funds. So we had a little committee of the EDA that was trying to come up with some ideas, but in the interest of time, we kind of needed to endorse something and move along. I need access to the application portal and work with the county administrator if y'all are so inclined, and then come back to you for a letter of support because the board is still the direct marketing organization. So we're kind of in a transition period. We've retained Whitney Law to help guide us through some tourism planning and decisions. So we don't have, well, anyway. So we continue to do what we are supposed to be doing in terms of the lodging tax and promoting tourism in the county, but also working on some other nuts and bolts, economic development issues to take advantage of the water and sewer, et cetera. So in any event, I tried to provide the board some basic information because some of you, this might be the first time you heard of it. So, but I'm working with the Virginia Tourism Corporation and again, Whitney Law, as well as Susan Cockrell with Virginia River Realm. And we're essentially just going to put together some applications for the county administrator to look over at the appropriate time, run them back by the board and the EDA.
Yeah, I can piggyback a little bit on that. Trent and I met with the campground folks the other day, took a tour of several of the campgrounds, got to know some of their issues, wants, desires, and fears. One of the things we're hearing almost unilaterally across all industries is the lack of available employees. Workforce housing continues to be a challenge for people, but employees, period, however they can get them, seems to be an issue, and we're exploring ways that we may be able to utilize some of that funding to help these industries react to the employment crisis. No promises there. I saw the framework. I've worked with Trent a little bit on it. I think it's a good starting point, and letting them fill in the necessary information and moving forward is probably a good way to go. I think our deadline for submitting something to the state is in December.
December, you basically have 1 year. There's no match requirements. This is just basically staff time. We've already had an initial conversation because before my arrival in May, the Museums of Middlesex group had submitted an idea, the genealogical cemetery record, that Civil War, records, that type of thing. Had some other conversations with some other folks and need to follow up with the town of Urbana. I'll be going there tonight for their Main Street committee meeting, so I'm sure I'll talk with them because they've got some nice little initiatives, with the QR code system that they've got going on. So anyway, we're just trying to work through some ideas, and we do need to do it quickly. But then we'll have a year to spend, and there's no shortage of ideas. We just need to hone them down.
Okay, so you'll come back to us with
Yes, sir.
a definitive request?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Any questions for Trent?
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all very much.
Let's see. Got next, Dave, the VDOT.
Wait till a minute. Good afternoon. I actually have an action item here. The board needs to adopt a resolution in order to keep these smart scale funding projects going through. They've screened in to this point. This is the round 5 smart scale funding that we're going through right now. So actually, VDOT's, I guess Lee told you a lot of the VDOT staff couldn't work on one project because a lot of them are working on smart scale. So actually, they're trying to get back their final designs on these projects so I can enter them by the 1st of August. So hopefully they'll get that back to me so I can do that pretty quickly. So
Would you mind just, for the benefit of those people who are not familiar with smart scale 5, round 5, what that means, just put some.
This is VDOT funding. This is not a match funding. These are, smart scale is a process that they use to filter in projects that are, based on a VTrans need. So what happens is you assess the needs in your county, and certain items or certain needs would have different levels of need, so to speak. All of our needs are tier 4, tier 5 needs. They don't reach the needs that, say, a Fredericksburg might have. They might have a tier 1 or tier 2. So that and hinders somewhat the scoring on them, but that doesn't mean they're not going to necessarily be screened in. So we have 3 projects that luckily have been screened into this point. They haven't been filtered out. That doesn't mean they're going to be funded, but we've, crossed one threshold. We'll take it one threshold at a time and, hope that one of these projects or all of them get funded. Chances may not be as good as some of the other localities that have, more needs. So one of the projects we have is Town Bridge Road. We put in for safety improvements on that road. They would include shoulder improvements, things that would, possible pavement widening if it's necessary in certain areas. You can see that would span most of that length of that road and take it right down to the intersection with Old Virginia Street, which Old Virginia Street intersection has proffers from the campground for intersection improvements. So the fact that we have an economic driver in that we have a current approved site plan for Bethpage helps with our economic component for that particular screen-in. So having our project there helps with that. Second project Matt has up on the board, up on the screen is the intersection improvements at Regent Road. We know the board's had many discussions on this road. We know it's a problem. That intersection was identified as having a V-Trans need. So some of that would include some turn lanes. I think if you go to the next slide, man, I think it actually has the improvements. So that's the current. Yeah. I thought there was one in there for they didn't have the design, that didn't have the design. Go back one. Maybe it didn't make it. Okay, well, I just can't see it. It probably does have the improvements. So there would be turn lane improvements, perhaps a left-hand turn lane onto Regent Road as you head east. So that intersection's in dire need of some help. We know that's very busy. And then you can go back to the third one, Matt. One of our favorites.
Drum roll, please.
Yes, a roundabout located at Stampers Bay Road and Twiggs Ferry Road. This would be a traffic calming component. And we know that, John and I have had some discussions on this. And we know traffic's an issue on that road. I don't know has a kind of a mesmerizing geometry to it. There's these long swooping curves. I think I've seen many close accidents, and John's witnessed some. And this component would certainly help because people coming out of Stampers Bay Road, if you've ever pulled out there, the visibility and the sight distance is poor. It would enable that traffic to calm and to kind of merge at that one point. So I don't know what the chances of this project are, but it certainly is intriguing, as it would probably help with some of the other issues on Twiggs Ferry too, just by virtue of slowing traffic down and having that merge and having people kind of reset their thinking a little bit. So, so in conclusion, if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to ask me. But in the end, and the last slide is just a copy of the resolution that's been in your board packet. So that's the resolution. VDOT was acceptable, have all 3 projects in one resolution. So you would just have to take action on that. And that would be submitted along with our August 1st submittal. So if the board has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Pretty straight.
I make a motion, we accept Resolution 2022-008.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Kuntz. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kuntz?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Mr. Chairman, we do have one other agency and staff report that did not make on the agenda because it actually came up this morning and was finalized, I think, yesterday afternoon or late Friday. We have with us Mark Flynn, who is joining us via Zoom. And I will move that over so everyone can see him. To give us an update on the airport project and discuss buffering MOU. Is that correct, Mark?
That is correct. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So you'll recall that there was a DEQ process that went on, and the one thing that the DEQ report required was to come up with a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Historic Resources and the Perkinson Trust and the Department of Aviation for some visual and sound screening by planting bushes, trees on the two edges of the Perkinson track. I don't know if you'll have the MOU before you or if it can be thrown up on screen, but there are two areas. It's really the two edges of the Perkinson property that adjoin county property or the airport property. So anyway, it's just two areas on the edge of where Perkinson comes into contact with the county, with the airport property. And under this MOU, Middlesex, through its contractor, Oscar, will plant evergreen bushes, trees, and I'll use those fairly generic terms. It looks like they would probably be wax myrtles, holly, or sweet bay or sweet bay magnolia. Plant small trees, not big stuff initially, so the initial installation wouldn't be that expensive in those buffer areas, and then maintain them and file a report each year on how they're doing. This is a 10-year agreement, and I guess that's really basically it. The main thing is, though, before the Department of Aviation can grant the license to begin the work on the airport property, this MOU has to be signed off on. The timing of it is that within 3 months that this thing is signed, the buffering plan will be presented. The Department of Aviation has responsibility to identify the trees. It's really a matter of negotiation. We're looking for things that are, like to have stuff that's indigenous to the area, like to have bushes, trees that go some 20 feet to 35 feet tall. That won't add any visual interference for pilots, is no problem. And trying to get bushes, trees that aren't real big bird attractors, because airplane engines sucking in birds when they take off is never a good thing. And that last not attracting birds, it appears to be pretty difficult. The Department of Forestry has had some input, and in fact, they came up with those three species. So that's, it's pretty straightforward, and I don't think it's going to cost a lot. The question, Heather asked a very good question about, okay, if the bushes have to be replaced 2 or 3 years from now, who's that on? That's on the county. But it also is pretty clear to me that anyway, that looks to me like 5 years from now, these things are growing, and there'll be more of a sort of a thicket that grows in with them. How vegetation grows. Matter of fact, if you look at the edges of the Perkinson property and on the county property that is on the line that's sort of perpendicular to the runway line, about 25 feet of that already have a bunch of thick vegetation on the county property, so I think it'll be no problem. So that's the MOU, pretty straightforward, not too expensive, and takes care of the last thing that we need for the Department of Aviation to sign off on this and allow the work to continue. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Mark, I just have a question on this. What's the logistics on this? This won't delay the process with it.
Correct, it will not. Once the MOU is signed by all the parties and and I've worked with DHR, Historic Resources, they're ready to sign when everybody else is signed off, working with DOAV to make sure they're ready to sign. So really, the process is, if you all approve it this afternoon, the county signs off on it. Russ Perkinson, I believe, is actually maybe in the audience, or will be available towards the end of the board meeting to sign it. He has another family member, I think, is the trustee, who will hopefully come by tomorrow to sign it. And then that'll get sent to me electronically. I'll send it to Department of Aviation to sign, and get it to DHR to sign. And then that will be done. That will be the last step for the license to be issued by the Department of Aviation to total us.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I'll alert the board to, we have a reporting requirement back to DHR and DOAB regarding the, and the trust and the landowner regarding the status of the buffer, the growth, the health, whatnot. That's probably something that we would delegate to Buildings and Grounds and/or the airport committee to work with maybe our local forester on just kind of taking a look at the buffer once a year, filling out a little report and sending it on in, and maybe at the next appropriate airport committee meeting, they review that with the trust and whatnot. That reporting requirement ends at the termination of the agreement, which is 10 years from the date of execution. So it does have a little monitoring agreement. Actually, it's a pretty good idea that we may want to consider asking our planning commission and planning department to start implementing, because oftentimes planning will ask developers of various stripes, forms, or the other to plant buffers. And then no one goes back to see if the buffers are growing. And we have limited staff, but making the applicant provide a report of the status and health of a buffer is not a bad idea. So that was all.
Do we need a formal motion for this? Okay, so we need a motion for me to be able to execute the MOU, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you would need a motion to authorize the chairman to sign this memorandum of understanding.
So moved.
I'll second it.
A motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Jesse. Any further discussion?
I'm just curious, why wouldn't we have come up with some sort of payment that would compensate for putting in shrubs and maintaining them and be shut of it? Was that ever an option, or? Mark?
Actually, because this is on county property, it's really, honestly, should be a county responsibility.
There's the answer. Thanks, Mark.
And also being really close to the runway, and it's better to have our folks than to have somebody else just going.
Any other discussion?
I'm not trying to be smart over here. That's just.
No, that question came from somebody with a lot of experience planting trees on county property where we've been a beggar and whatnot, so. Yeah. He knows we're probably going to ask him to do so again.
Okay, roll call, please, Betty.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank
Appreciate that.
you, Bill.
Let's see, do we need a 10-minute break? A couple hours in? Okay.
Second.
We'll be back at 4:10.
Hey there, man. I was on Reading Beach, Florida, playing dominoes with my Cuban family. Yeah. Playing dominoes. Yes. What's that? You know this is a road trip.
Break while I wasn't
I just got to be diagnosed.
Hey, John?
They might have somebody here at the end so you can say that they've got participation by the county.
The second reason I came back here was it's small enough.
Call the meeting back to order, please. All right, I'm going to change up the schedule a little bit. We have, under new business, we have, under 8B, the Town of Urbana Boundary Line Adjustment Request. Garth Wheeler is here representing the town, and I'm going to move that up to the next agenda item. Please come ahead.
And I apologize. We have a 6 o'clock meeting that we're, town hall meeting that we're, you need to be on. I got it. Test. Okay. Thank all of y'all for allowing us to attend the meeting today. And we're here at the request of Urbana Town Council, who voted to allow a land boundary adjustment of several parcels of property currently on the outskirts of the town in the vicinity of Virginia Street and Waverly Drive. And at the town council meeting held on June 23rd, council unanimously voted to move this project forward by coming to you to ask for your support. And the plat that was prepared by Bay Design is on the screen, and it shows the highlighted areas are show specifically the plats of property that we're looking to bring into the town limits. And it includes the town office where we moved in February, the town's water tower, the well, and a future well site. And other parcels include property owned by Thurston Properties and a field area that belongs to the Middlesex County Fire Department. And the field behind the building is actually in the town, and the field behind the fire department is in the county. And then property owned by FL Hall Limited Partnership, which is located on Waverly Drive and is approximately a 9-acre parcel. And we have letters of support from each of these entities, and y'all should have copies of those. So what's the rationale behind this? The town is currently 1 square mile and is basically built to capacity, and we'd like to maintain the quaintness of the town, but we also want to have the opportunity to expand some and also increase their tax base. It brings our town office, our water tower, and well into town limits, and the future development of this property would also increase county's tax base. We're asking the board to vote to approve this concept and ultimately to ask the county attorney, Heather Lewis, to work with the town attorney, Andrea Arard, to assist with and also your county administrator, Matt, to work with us and put a package together to move this project forward. And then ultimately, both the town and the county would have to hold public hearings and ultimately get a vote from the public. And I understand that there is some question about which parcels, and the plat actually is the accurate depiction and shows the plats in question.
I think it's the shaded area, and so
Right.
if I may, where the confusion has come from, on our version, the shading area didn't really come up. Garth has a shaded copy that we can circulate, and Matt's drawing it now. Thank you, Matt. So.
This is like
He's
trying
he's
to
not getting
spell
an.
in real time.
I was going to say, next you have to color inside the lines.
You know, Matt, we've been talking to the wrong AV people. Martha, you need to get with
Y'all recognize the skills?
So,
Appreciate you.
yeah, so just a moment here, Matt.
Some skills right
Yeah.
there.
Okay, it's
Well,
where,
I think
so it's wherever the heavy lines are.
Yes, that would be a good, there you go, thank you, Matt.
Now, there is a section there that is not included, and Heather was telling me that that could be a problem.
Yes, it's something
And-
we'll need to flush out.
And so and the reason that at the time, he did not, a while back, he had expressed a non-interest in becoming a part of the town. There was apparently some kind of friction or something. And so our thought process was that we would move forward with those people that had come to us and said that they wanted to move into the town, and then go back and talk to him and try to bring him in later. But we can flesh all this out.
So the highlighted areas are in a sense a coalition of the willing who want to come in.
Right.
And the track that was kind of left out, y'all had some initial input from him saying he did not want to participate.
Right.
And y'all plan to reach out to him again and
Yes.
say, hey, do you really mean it? Because we could draw this in now and be done with it, or?
Right.
All right, very good.
Mr. Chair, is that the Glen Baylor property you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And there's another house beside that, right? Is it-
I think he
Thornton's,
owns
right? There
all
was
of that
Thornton's, right?
property.
Huh? It's
He
all-
owns all of that.
He owns all of that? Okay.
Like it's almost like two lots, but they're both owned by the Baylors.
What we're looking for here, Heather, is just whether or not there's support to continue working on this. There's not a concrete proposal.
Well, in essence, yes. If it's the will of the majority of this board to move forward with this concept as initially, I mean, there is a concept being presented to you, and it does have the support of the town council. The next steps that I would recommend is that the board make a formal motion directing staff, county administrator and myself, to work with Garth and their attorney, Andrea. I can give, would you like so the brief overview of the process is that we need to put together, again, if it's the desire of the majority of this board to move forward, the town would need to, in working with the county, an agreement, basically a boundary line agreement. That does require a meets and bounds survey. The code does allow for GIS mapping. I would strenuously object to that. At meets and bounds, this needs to be done correctly. This is a compiled plat. This is not sufficient. It has to be a meets and bounds survey as required by the code. Then we would have we'd have to advertise, and we have to properly notify all the property owners. Then we have 2 separate public hearings. And then, if we are not challenged by 1/3 of the property owners, we'll petition the circuit court to ask for approval, and we have to have a hearing. I'm giving a very short summary of a very complex area of law. That's where we start. There are a lot of nuances to this that we have to work through. And so it'll just take some time. It absolutely can be done. For example, one thing I was discussing with Mr. Wheeler is the Voting Rights Act. This is a change in your boundary lines. This changes zoning control. The county no longer has control of these parcels zoning, the town does. The town, there's a taxation change there. You still collect, there's a double taxation for those parties. But mainly the Voting Rights Act, to be frank with you, is the one thing that's glaring to me that we're going to have to work on. The maps would change. Your numbers change. I've confirmed with the registrar there's a potential to add 6 new voters. Not all of them are active at this time. So these are, again, these are all things just to work through. We've got a little to-do list here. And if it's the wish of the majority, then I need you to empower staff so that we can begin working with the town. So that was a long answer, but there you go.
And then I guess you will be representing the county on what the county would field from a cost standpoint for this process?
Yes, sir. So the main cost I foresee is the survey. I mean, obviously, you know, anything beyond that we would want to talk about, but I don't know how the board wishes to handle that. So that would be my main thing that I would be looking to you for direction for.
Yeah, and just to add a little further specificity on that, I hate to say this, but a lot of the bulk of the work on this project would probably be conducted by Garth and their attorney, and of course the cost, because they're the ones seeking the adjustment. Heather and I would be there to help and guide and try to work out any wrinkles as arise. But sorry, buddy.
No, you're absolutely right. And council, you know, they voted on this knowing this. This has actually been brewing out here for several years.
Right.
And then it became a bigger issue when we relocated our town office outside of the town limits. And to us, it just makes sense.
Welcome to the county.
Yeah. And to us, it makes sense, you know, we want to be in the town, but we left out of necessity, and we brought in the DMV Select and as part of that move. And so.
In regards to the precinct change, I don't see 6 voters that live in that in this of what we're talking about.
Well, that's something we can discuss with the registrar. So that's from her. I didn't make, you know, she's telling me in those parcels that she's reviewed, we have 6 potential voters. Not all are active. I understand that there are currently 3 active and 1 inactive, and then there's a potential to add more. So that's why I phrased it as 6 potential voters. But the larger issue is the maps, the drawing of the maps. And so we have to have contiguous lines. And so these are some of the details that we need to flesh out so that staff can review this, discuss with town council and their attorney and Garth, and come back to you and say, here's where we are. But again, we need to know if it's the will of the majority, because there are things to flush out there.
Can I speak to the voters that I think they're talking about? Mr. Mullins or Thurston Property owns a duplex, and that's where the residents are. It's a duplex in this, and it's part of the Thurston Properties.
I will say this will take some time.
Yeah, and then it's the Baylor, like I say, Glenn Baylor, I'll talk to him myself, but now, suppose he said, hey, I don't want to be in the town. Can you go around him? I'm just saying, does he have to be on?
That's a legal question.
Right, does he have to be in town? Because I kind of know him, I know him.
Yeah.
And
I would say
that's all I can say.
Yes.
That's all I can say, but what I'm just saying, you know, I will sit down and talk with him. I'm going to say that, I'm going to talk with him and see how his feeling is on it, because he is a voter too.
Yes, sir, Mr. Jesse, absolutely. I mean, if you answering that question right now, I think it would be very difficult to move forward in compliance with state voting and federal requirements.
Right.
But that's my first blush at this. You know, I think that maybe there's some other lines, there are other creative solutions we could work out if that comes to be the issue. But you're dealing with this under one provision that says you can change your boundary lines, but then you also have to remember there's state and federal. When you change locality boundary lines, you trigger those Voting Rights Act. And that's really, to be frank with you, the biggest, most complex part of the law to navigate here.
When we dealt with a similar issue in the town of Warsaw, of course, that was too many years ago, but I'll mention it for discussion purposes. We were adjacent to a predominantly African-American community who had no interest or desire ever to want to be in the town. And we worked through those issues. But now times have changed. It may be that the feds say, no, you need to be a part of the town. We don't know. We'll have to look into and get into a little bit more of that. And there are our elections friends with the state of Virginia that we probably want to call in and say, hey, give us your expert guidance on the matter and see what they say. But I know back then, we were allowed not to take the community in because the community did not want to come into the town.
And
So-
we're just asking for the support of the board to see where we can go with this. And it may not happen.
Right.
But we're hoping that it will.
I'll make the motion for the county attorney and whatever resources she needs or people to proceed on with the negotiation with the town for the possibility of changing the boundary lines.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Kuntz. Any other discussion?
Now, when we were talking about this earlier, it's been going on a while. I didn't realize it was gonna go all the way over to Red Hill. My understanding was gonna go to where, and I just saying, at first,
Right.
that's where it was gonna go from where your DMV office all the way up to the hill and get that. Now, and now I'm realizing it's going farther than that. And at one time, and that's where I'm realizing it now. But I'm just saying, that's where I got some questions right now. Because
Okay,
before it was just Mullins rental property, and because he has a rental property there, no doubt about it. And the fire department, and all that, and blocks around and where you're located, that field, and go straight up the hill. Now it's going farther where, at first, it really didn't impact anyone.
That was at the property that was added was done at the request of Thurston Properties. Because you're right, we had originally not included that.
Yeah,
It was
wasn't
all up at the top of the hill, the well, like I said,
Yeah.
the future well site, the water tower. And he made the request of, it's his property, and why not just go on and put it all in there? And so that was done at his request.
Okay, all right. That's why I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah.
understanding what was going on. Okay.
I'll just say this, it's his intention to develop at least that property that is, if you look out our front door, that field between the water tower and our town office, he's looking down the road to develop that.
It's real. I missed some of it. I got you late. I've been listening to it, riding up down the road. It come from the doctor's office. Now, what was the reason y'all want to expand the line?
The reason is because, number one, we had to move our town office, and we relocated, so now we're in the county. And so we want to do a boundary adjustment to move the town office into the town. Also, the property that we have on top of the hill where the water tower is, a well site and a future well site is town property. So this would bring town property into the property. And then the other reason is because the folks that are impacted by this have made the request to come into the town. Thurston Properties, the Hall family, the town, obviously, and the fire department agreed and wants to move the field that is currently in the county and their building is in the town, and this would just bring everything all together.
Now, something Mr. Jessup just said, that y'all want to go up to Red Hill. Now, from what I have seen and have heard, that change, that changes things. You know, and I'm gonna say it like this, and this is the way I see it. You know, I say things, keep things simple, so I can understand them, but I'm not too much worried about me understanding, too old to worry too much about it, but I'm gonna make sure that everybody understands. The DMV, you know, I didn't know that the DMV was not in Urbana. So it's almost, to me, what is happening here to me, it's kind of like you put the cart in front of the horse. Being on the Board of Supervisors, nobody said that we was putting it in Middlesex County. Now, it's something like me building a house on your property and asking you for the property after you build a house. And now we are interfering with some other people. We're making this thing different than what it was. And
I'm confused, because the DMV Select benefits not only the town of Urbana, but it benefits Middlesex County and the surrounding area. And so I'm not following what you're saying.
One question there. Does DMV get anything to the town of Urbana?
Do they give us anything?
Yeah, do you get anything, just the building
No.
sitting there?
We're paying for the employee. We're paying for the office space. So we did that as a convenience for the town of Urbana. And the town of Urbana, and I've said this before in previous meetings, the town of Urbana is a destination. You're not going to be just riding by and go by Urbana and say, hey, we're going to stop. We're a destination. So we brought in and partnered with DMV Select so that we would have a destination to bring people into not only the town of Urbana, but to Middlesex County.
You know, I understand what you're saying, and I don't want to be too much trickery here. The basic thing, just like this, when you read it in the Sentinel, it said DMV was, and I'm not disagreeing in a roundabout way, but I'm gonna say it the way I see it. All right, DMV, yes, I'm glad it came to Middlesex, okay? But if you ask anybody, where was it at? You would say that was in the town of Urbana. Now today, you sitting in front of us saying, look, we're gonna move the boundary lines past where DMV is at. Now, I don't, you know, I don't get it, man. I'm just simple. It's been like that for hundreds of years. Now, for some justified reason, you really want to change it. Now you're gonna go beyond what you started out, because at first it wasn't that far. Now you want to move it. When you going?
I don't want to move anything, sir.
Well, see, since you're getting the presentation,
Thurston Properties made the request to move that property into the town. And what I'm asking is for the county to work with us, and if y'all decide that that's not what you want to do, then we go back to Thurston Properties and say to them, hey, this doesn't work for the county. It's all about partnership. It's all about working together. And at the time when we started looking at the DMV Select, we were going to try to locate in our building. And so we found out that the building that we were currently in on Cross Street in the town proper, Urbana, did not suit our needs. So we found another place to locate. And that's how we got to being right outside the town line. I can walk in 150 yards back into the town. So,
Any other discussion? We've got a motion duly seconded.
I'd just be curious to hear Don's perspective. It's in your district. Where do you stand on this, Don?
At this point, we're asking the county attorney to partner with the town to see what the feasibility is of doing what the town is asking. So I don't see what the big deal is at this point. We'll all have a chance to research this, think about it, talk about it, and then decide once it comes before us again to what should or shouldn't be done. So, tonight's not a real, you'll still have the opportunity to vote yea or nay on it at some future time frame. My personal opinion, I think it benefits the town to do that. I don't think it hurts the county to do that. That being said, without the expert advice of our capable county attorney, which may come up at a later date. So at this point, I don't see what the big stumbling block is to at least look into it and see if it works for both sides.
Thank you.
I also would like to say, I see where you were saying, but I was dealing before you became on this board. I'm gonna let you know that. Okay, the lines has been changed, and we can check it and go through it. I don't have no problem with it. But the problem I had with it, you have a home there that, at first, it was no homes involved in this other than what Mullen owned. Now you got a person there, Baylor, and I'll introduce him to you, okay? We'll talk to him. I think if you can get him on board with that, and because what they did, they jumped around it. So
I have no problem.
I'm just letting you know where I'm standing. Yeah, we can go over this right now and vote for it, but that's going to be the issue right now because, like I'm saying, it wasn't in the first proposal, and now it's in this one. So yeah, let's go through the steps. Let's go through the steps and vote on it, and then we come back, and when it finally decide everything, we do it. Because see, you have a landowner there that wants to expand. He got in this situation now, and to FL Hall property, we know that. I said, and you know it. So yeah, let's go through it. Let's see it. Let's go through the steps.
I think at the end of the day, you put the pros and the cons, and if you have other people that are against that, you'll hear that in the public hearing.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do. It's nothing simple about this.
No, I don't think
okay, it's nothing simple about it. I'm gonna let you know that. It's nothing simple about it. We're gonna go through our steps and do what we need to do.
That's right. And then where it falls is where it falls.
Yeah.
It may fall one way or the other.
Majority rules, wherever it votes, it votes. That's what I'm saying.
That's right. That's right.
I'm just encouraging us to be fair with what we do and be good neighbors to everyone. And then we do what's right. That's all I want to do. Because I've been here a long time, seen a lot of things that haven't been right. So I'm letting you know that.
And Mr. Jesse, I agree with you 100%. And maybe I'm out of line for saying this, but I'm going to say it. And Matt knows me well enough to know that I speak my mind too. And the county and the town have a history of not working together. We don't partner well at all. I don't know whose fault it is, but it's a fact. And it's been a long-standing fact. And so what we have been trying to do is we want to change that. We want to work with the county. We want to be a part of the county, and we want us to work together for the betterment of all the citizens.
Mr. Goff, I realize that. Like I said, and I know we work together. We're going to work together. I haven't been a volunteer firefighter for a banner for 30-some years. I'm going to let you know that. I've been in the county longer than you have. So I'm going to let you know that, yeah, we've been working together, and we're going to continuously work together with both of us. So I'm speaking my piece, all right? I've been on a volunteer firefighter for more than 30 years. When I got out of college in 84, I'm gonna let you know, in 1984, I joined the fire department. And I'm just letting you know that. And when I joined, I couldn't get an application. Since you were gonna bring this up, I couldn't get an application because they couldn't find one. Till I had to go talk to somebody to find me an application. And I've been on the department ever since. So I'm just letting you know that. And I've been working with the Banner Fire Department ever since, and with the town. Whatever I can do to help out, I will help out. But I'm gonna let you know a little history on that. That's why I'm very sensitive with this. Because, you know, you want to try to help out in the community and you can't find an application. And I came back home from college and wanted to help out and be in the community, and the chief couldn't find the application for me, and I had to go around another route. I didn't have to do that. It just brought up some memories, that's all. This brought up some memories, and I'm gonna just let you know that. That's what actually happened.
And Wayne,
And I'm not being, I'm not gonna be mad about anything. I wanna be fair. I'm a fair person to everybody, and I'm gonna let you know that. Because if I didn't, you know, I wouldn't have never tried to join the fire department. I want to help out in the community, and that's what I always want to do. And I just want this done right.
and I'm with you,
Okay.
100%. And thank you for your service.
Any other discussion? May we have a roll call vote on the motion, please?
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
No.
And Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Garth.
Thank you.
Moving right along back to the regular agenda items, section 5 on the agenda, citizen appointments. Betty, you have some?
Okay, yes, much shorter list this month than you had last month. We have openings on the Keep Middlesex Beautiful Committee that 2 people have expressed an interest in joining that. And then David Gresham as a CPMT parent representative. And that stands for Comprehensive Policy Management Team with the Comprehensive Services. I'm looking at Matt because Matt is the chairman of that. So that's all we have. Aaron McFarland, Joan Harris for the Keep Middlesex Beautiful Committee, and then David Gresham for the CPMT parent rep.
Betty?
Yes.
So the 2 people for the Middlesex Beautiful Committee, Joan Harris and Aaron McFarland, is that correct?
Yes.
And are we only looking to place one of those on that committee?
No, I believe both of them. I don't think they have any limits on the number of people that can serve on that committee.
Oh,
No, there is a limit on the number.
there is?
But we don't have, sorry, John, you were going to say, but I think you only currently have 1 member actually appointed?
We have, with me, 2.
Okay, sorry.
We have, in the bylaws, I think, allowed for 5. We did a marketing blitz and tried to go out to the public, and we're still very open to having more members join as committee members or not as committee members. We want to get as much involvement as possible, but after doing all that work to get people to come and say they wanted to participate, this is what we've got. And it looks like we're going to be a committee of 4 initially. And then if we find another committee member, we'll happily have them join. But this is just us getting started.
so it's not a problem with approving both of these individuals?
The intent is to approve both if we could, please.
Okay, cool. So do we need 2 motions or 1 motion
You can
for
just do-
approval of everybody as a whole?
Just one motion's fine.
Okay, I make the motion that we approve all 3 of the individuals, 2 for the beautification of Middlesex County, and the Devlin Gresham for the parent rep. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Coons. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jesse? Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries.
And
Next.
you'll note that you have 2 vacancies there. One, the Planning District Commission is an opening it's a 1-year term that's open now with no one serving.
Is that for any earmarked district, or is that?
No, it's countywide, 1-year appointment.
This is the
Planning
Planning
District
District
Commission.
Commission, not the Planning Commission.
That's right. Planning District.
And I think my participation on that's rotated off. They have a kind of a schedule where the county administrators will rotate on and off. It hasn't rotated off yet?
I don't think so. Huh? You don't know.
Planning District Commission, yeah, PDC.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I thought mine had rotated off in January.
They would have let us know, I
Right,
would
I don't
think.
think you did. I was wondering about that. I don't think you did.
Okay, well, I'll find out from
But
Louis.
I followed out, I think, because we got other county administrators there too. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I'll check into it.
Okay, moving right along here. Ms. Riccardi, you have a budget supplement request?
Yes, about a week ago, I had a phone conference with the county landfill engineers who are called Resource International and the DEQ. You had been presented something to them back in March, and they said, this is how we're going to insert these probes. We're going to do some, we're going to do a repair, and it was about $20,000. And everybody at the time agreed to it. However, DEQ and the Resource International have since agreed that that will not work. And they are rather insistent that we take immediate action. And this immediate action is, let me see if I can get it.
Three landfill.
It's
gas
three,
compliant.
it's 3 landfill gas compliant extraction wells for a total cost of $51,465. We already have $25,000 budgeted this year, so it's simply to appropriate an additional $26,465 to resolve a small problem probe at the landfill. So I request a budget amendment already.
And I can assume that since we're dealing with that group, we don't have a whole heck of a lot of wiggle room or fighting power, correct?
You are correct.
Is this the technology that we thought we were going to get for $25,000 wouldn't work, so we're getting a technology that it provides the same solution, but it costs more? Or are we as effective with this solution as we thought we were going to be?
The first, I'm assuming that with the first solution that was brought about in March, you're talking about that one? Apparently, the purpose of that.
Those were passive vents.
Yeah, it was passive, and this one actually has pumps that pump gas out.
That pull the gas out.
Okay, but it does the same thing.
Yes.
The goal is to
Only-
remove the gases.
only
More
works.
effectively, yes. More effectively.
I will entertain a motion for this supplement request.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Coates. Any further discussion?
I'm curious if the administration could go back to the experts and get us maybe an update on what closure looks like today. Like how long are we going to be continued to be exposed to these kinds of things? My sense was that we were getting close, but aside from this vote, I'd just like an update that gives us a sense of, it's going to be at least 3 more years or it's going to be 10 more years, but there are these other milestones where we might have to spend more. It'd be nice to have almost a miniature capital improvement plan, just like where are we going to be spending money in the future and for how long are we exposed?
Okay. I agree. I will do that.
Any other discussion?
It's been going on a long time, and they keep moving. They keep moving the scale, so say forever. Infinity.
It's like the Peanuts cartoon. Every time you think you're going to kick that ball, they pull it out from under you.
Well, and I mean, if we keep talking about it, it may change my vote because part of me feels like if we just respond every time, they get used to us saying, okay, how high do we jump this time? And I don't see the alternative selection.
Yeah, if I may encourage you,
Please.
this one we have to agree to.
This is a DEQ
Yeah, this is a DEQ. Sorry, I know you didn't know that. That's why I was.
No, I mean, I see it in there, but, that's why I want, instead of this coming up every 3 years and us revisiting it in the ether, sort of out of the blue, I would like for staff, when they come with this, to be able to say, if you recall, 12 years ago we did this, 6 years ago we did this, 2 years ago we did this. This is normal because we have to do it for DEQ, And in another 5 years, right now, given the best information that we have, we should be out of this, but there is a chance that 2 years we might have. That's all I want, is just the landscape view of the whole horizon.
Me too.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Jesse.
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz.
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is budget supplement request 2023-03.
Yes, and this is for the, to appropriate the funds to purchase the property that we just closed on last week.
I move that we approve appropriation request FY 2023-3.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Coons, second by Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Jesse.
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Next is administrator updates. Matt?
And Mr. Chairman, I don't have much. I can cover it now, or given that we have public hearings tonight, we could recess for dinner and come back and handle the remaining portion of the regular agenda. I know we've been running late on these the last couple of meetings. You're probably going to have a pretty late meeting tonight, so you may want to eat.
We've still got a closed session.
We do, which could be bumped too, couldn't it?
So would you present this before we present the other 7 o'clock agenda items?
After,
After?
if that's the desire. I just know we're running late on the regular agenda, and I don't know if we've got enough snacks tonight. We may.
We don't.
Okay, well, then I'm going to go ahead and push forward.
Okay.
Just a couple things, Mr. Chairman. You have the cigarette tax report. It's self-explanatory. Our VRA authorization will wait until August the 2nd for a couple of reasons. One, we're still waiting on, HRSD to give us an estimated completion date for our contractor that was selected to perform the work in Cook's Corner. That is needed for some of our clean water revolving loan paperwork that we need to finalize with VRA, and that hopefully will be given to us before the August meeting, along with some other logistical items that we're working through the VRA. Real quick, the Virginia Resources Authority is the agency responsible for administering a lot of the financial logistics on the clean water revolving loan on the part of DEQ and the Department of Health. So you get approved for the loan grant, what have you, through DEQ, the Health Department, and then they go to the Virginia Resources Authority for the logistics of administering the financial aspect of that. So we have to work with VRA and our bond counsel on solidifying a couple of logistical items, one of which is the estimated completion date of the project. So more on that in August. And I promised the staff that I would mention this in my administrator's report. Recently, we moved this meeting because of the July 4th holiday. Well, we have another one coming up. It's Labor Day, and it's same situation where we have the holiday right before the meeting. We wanted to ask if the board wanted to consider moving that meeting as well to allow maybe to the 13th. That would be my recommendation, move it 1 week, similar to what we did with this one. Again, it is our hope and desire, and I have a person whose sole mission come the organizational meeting in January is to help me get the agenda out and to make sure that we address all holidays upcoming, so we can address that at that time. And she's waving to me behind you, Mr. Chairman. So if it is the pleasure of the board, I would request you consider moving the meeting in September as well.
What's the will of the board?
13th.
13th is what I'd recommend. Yeah.
I think it makes sense to do that.
We'll try to catch them in the organizational meeting in January, so we don't schedule meetings right after holidays.
Is everybody in favor of that change? Do we need to have a formal proposal and vote?
I would recommend you vote on it, yeah, so we can let the media
Is
know
there a
that it's been
motion?
officially moved.
I'll make the motion to move the meeting for our September Board of Supervisors meeting from the 6th to the 13th.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
What?
Well, there's no second.
Really? Y'all gonna force me to come back from the beach on that day?
Well, then we could move it up earlier in the day.
We might need, how about an arm wrestling challenge here to winner take all?
I'll second for discussion.
Good, thank you.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Coons. Any further discussion?
I don't have a strong preference. I agree, Matt, in the future, we need to correct this at the beginning of the year. I will just mention, I have obligations that are going to make 3 o'clock on Tuesdays harder for me. I'm probably going to be a little late to some meetings going forward because of my career change. But as far as this one, I could go either way. I don't have a preference.
Any other discussion? A roll call, please, Betty.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Abstain.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? And Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. So the September meeting is moved to the 13th.
Thank you very much.
And speak on behalf of the staff, I'm sure many of the staff members will probably make plans over Labor Day, and they'll appreciate it too. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, county attorney update.
I feel like I had a whole host of things to say, but at this point, I don't think I have very much at this time. I've moved forward with the Water Authority project, and the light is at the end of the tunnel there, so for my involvement. That's about it.
Thank you. Good work on that. Matters presented to the board. Mr. Jesse.
Okay, yeah, I did go to the PDC meeting, and with Virginia Port Authority, there's funds that are gonna be available, $5 million dredging fund where the Middle Peninsula will own the dredge and move it around. So that's what we're looking at, and there's funding from the state to do that.
Oh, that's
So
great.
That's gonna be good, you know, for the Middle Peninsula. And then also they have a smaller dredge that for like small areas that you can put in, you can pull it behind a truck, big truck, and carry it to certain areas. And there's funding for that too. So there's some good things that's coming up the pipe for dredging in Middlesex County and Middle Peninsula, put it that way. And also I attended the Juneteenth festival that was up here, and that was very well attended. Trent Funkhauser, he spoke, you know, about, you know, the EDA and his job and everything like that. And that was all, that's all the meetings that I went to. Okay.
Thank you. Don?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Well, you go pick up the run. I'll let you take care of the run, but I did go down to the Urbana Fire. They had fireworks down there in Urbana, and you know, naturally Kevin and I set up for the sounds on that. And then they had a run in Deltaville, but love to take care of that. That's it for me.
Don?
I'd just like to bring you briefly up to speed on two committees that I sat on. The Middlesex County Museum, they had a part in Marine Corps Detachment 1317 from Yorktown, that they also sent two representatives from the Pentagon to celebrate General Puller's 124th birthday, and made it started at Christ Church Parish and then ended with a brief ceremony at Puller Park. So wanted to let you know, the museum's actually, they have several members that are on the historical committee with our chairman. They're doing quite a lot of things that we should be pleased about. They're trying to go through a lot of the information that they have from the museum, from people that had done special things in the county. In addition to the African American history, they're looking at some exhibits. They're changing some exhibits. They're being quite active on that. They also were part of the June 10th celebration, and they were present to share aspects of our county and African American history. In addition to that, and they participated in that with the Motown concert, with the NAACP, the Game Changers, the museum, the Historic Society, and Creative Productions. And I wanted to go to that, but I understand it was a very, very nice event there at the middle school. That's all I can tell you about the museum at this point. I'd like to also quickly talk about the Rappahannock River Basin Commission. And I will just read you briefly what they're all about. To provide guidance for the stewardship and enhancement of water quality and natural resources of the Rappahannock River Basin, the commission shall be a forum in which local governments, citizens can discuss issues affecting the basin's water quality and quantity and other natural resources through promoting communication, coordination, education, and suggesting appropriate solutions to identify problems. The commission also works close with the General Assembly, and I had the privilege of being at their meeting at the Tides Inn, where, and that's represented by 6 members of the Senate and 9 members of the House of Delegates. And Keith Hodgers was present and talked about what Wayne just brought up about dredging and how that will affect our county and the dollar figure amounts that he's trying to push for that program. They're very strong in the original founders, and most of those are still with it, is the city of Fredericksburg, Rappahannock, Fauquier, Culpeper, Orange, Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline, King George, Essex, Westmoreland, Richmond, Middlesex, Lancaster. And all of those counties provide different things for the river basin, whether you be more north, whether you be in the middle, or whether you be at the south end of it, and all of them face particular challenges with how to control the water quality from all of those groups. So they also, I found it quite interesting at the meeting that they're doing some funding for, in fact, the poster child for some of the reseeding of some of the banks along rivers. The Tides Inn was currently involved with doing that. They also work with the forestry department on reseeding of trees along with the landowner, and/or that's kind of a 50-50 deal where the landowner has to have a financial stake in ways to help purify runoff waters, et cetera. They do a lot with that, and I'll find out more in September, which was more intriguing to me, was how the river basin is affected by solar energy, and some of the things that they're looking at it for that organization to help with continuing to promote clean water for the Rappahannock River Basin. So that, I didn't know that that was an issue, but it seems like that's being discussed and ways that they can improve on solar farms for keeping the rivers clean. So more information further to come on that, and that's my two committee reports.
Thank you. John?
Nothing at this time.
Reggie?
Well, we did an official opening of Whiting Creek last month,
Yay.
and it was, I got a lot of comments on it. A lot of the fishermen, and liked it. It's small, but it's still county, and we didn't change. In a couple of meetings that Wayne went to the Middle Peninsula, they got great things going on at Middle Peninsula, which is funded through the state, and we talking about shorelines and stuff like this year. So that you always got to keep updated on that to find out and watch, see what's going on, so we know exactly the things that are going on. So that's about all I had to say.
Okay, as Wayne alluded to, the Deltaville 5K and Kids Fun Run was held on 4th of July weekend. That is the primary fundraiser for the Deltaville Community Association, which provides a number of resources to the community in Deltaville. The pool, ballpark, basketball courts, tennis courts, playground, meeting facility, all that is basically funded by just a couple of volunteer activities, and the 5K and Kids Fun Run is the major fundraiser. And Wayne once again came and provided musical entertainment in the PA system, and we really appreciate that. It was, we couldn't have done it without that. I also had meeting with, I'll call it the EDA Steering Committee, where we talked about next steps for the EDA as it moves forward. They are committed to developing a revised strategy, which they haven't provided in a number of years, to better help the Board of Supervisors and the EDA bring their focus together and be productive. One of the points that's come up from a number of businesses is the workforce housing issue. How can we have a workforce if we don't have any housing? Whether or not that falls under the scope of work of the EDA, we haven't really talked about. It may or may not, but it's certainly an issue that's recognized by the EDA. We can't grow businesses if we can't provide workers. Also, we had a meeting of the Historic Courthouse Committee. We have engaged Tyler Redabaugh to do some research. We're researching all of the portraits and artifacts and monuments here to understand exactly what they are, who they are, why they were there, when they were put there, how did they fit into an historical perspective on the courthouse, because our overall goal is to be able to make the courthouse tell a story about its history, which is really a fascinating history as I've learned more about it. There's a lot to present, and I think it's going to be a fabulous project as we do our basic research and start down that path. We also had a meeting of the School Finance Committee and discussed, just as an idea for us to go forward, the possibility of evaluating whether there may be some fit between our respective maintenance departments, between the school and the county, and Reggie and Don have both volunteered to serve on a committee to look into that with the schools. And so the next steps there are just going to be for them to put their heads together and see, do we have redundancy, or is there a way for us to operate at scale more cost-effectively to maintain all the facilities that we have in the county? And then finally, the Water Authority attended that, and we're getting close. It's agonizing that we're not able to wrap it up because I've got many vocal constituents who are at the end of the line, and we're hoping they would have water this summer, and they don't. That's it for me. Thank you, Don and Reggie, for volunteering to work on that project. I think we've got some opportunity there.
I do too. I talked to Dustin Harris, which is the head of maintenance, at the school board meeting last night, and the school board did bring up that we wanted to try to get a committee together, and they'll be assigning several people for us to be able to meet with.
That sounds great. Okay, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Would anybody like to address the board at this time? Hearing none, I'll close public comment. And we now, Heather, I'll ask you to introduce the closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe we're going to go downstairs for it. Okay. Pursuant to you need a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711, A3 and A8. This is for the discussion of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, where a discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and/or the negotiating strategy of the public body, and for consultation with legal counsel employed by the body regarding specific legal questions about said acquisition of real property.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimber?
Aye.
And, Mr. Chairman, just for the public, I don't anticipate formal action reconvening at this time, and so I don't think there'll be formal action, or am I mistaken?
No, you're not mistaken.
Okay, I didn't think so. So there won't be a motion or anything?
I would request, since many of the public and the media are leaving, that y'all stay in this room.
Okay, sorry.
Just not necessarily for the whole closed session, but just so you can familiarize yourself with the property in question.
Okay. All right. Well, there's no action being taken, so we're going to politely ask the public to leave.
And have some dinner for us.
Thank you very much, appreciate that.
Bob, eat for me, man.
Yeah, really.
I tried.